Welcome everybody to our episode Reflections. Let's start by saying that we are Marcus, a community of fans who are watching their favorite shows together. We started with Gilmore Girls because it was a show that our founder, John, starred in, but never really watched. And he felt it was time. We have been doing so nightly for a few months, and yesterday we finished season 6. We are in a hiatus week from episodes, so we still have a lot of events planned, but no evening watches. If you're interested in learning more, please visit our app, which was also created by John, to get all the info and to figure out how to join in on, I was going to say lots of fun, but today it's been lots of frustration through kernels and mementos. Usually there's a lot of us up here talking, but for this fireside chat, it will just be John and I until we're done with the main event. We are recording this and archiving it on our YouTube channel for now, and hopefully on remarcus.com eventually. So if you do come up here in the end, please be aware that your comments will be recorded. If you are not comfortable with that, please don't speak or don't come up on the couch. Tonight, we want to examine John's recollections of the past seasons and get his general impressions on how he feels now that he knows so much more of the story. So first off, John, thanks for doing Remarcus to begin with, and thanks for doing this tonight.
It's my pleasure.
How I'm expecting tonight to go is that I will start by reading you the episode titles. If that clicks any memories or thoughts, please share them. If you don't remember anything, I do have short recaps to try and jog some of your ideas loose. For some characters, I will specifically ask you, do you remember this character? How do you feel about this character? That sound okay?
Love it.
All right. The first thing I want to check with you is, do you want to have a scale to judge these episodes on? I was thinking 1 to 5 stars.
I like that.
1 would be, I remember if I watched it. 2 is, yeah, that seems familiar. 3, I recognize the title or I thought it was okay. 4 is, yes, I know it, it was good. Or 5 is, I remember it because I love it.
Yeah, great.
Okay. As a disclaimer for everyone now, I am a fan of Gilmore Girls, but I do not know every detail. So if I miss something or I misspeak, I hope you will not come at me, all you diehard fans, because I messed something up. I also did not keep track of Kurt's every job in every episode, so please do not have that expectation of me. So I'm just going to leave that out there. Okay. So
can you remind me on number 3? What was 3? The middle one.
3 is I recognize it if I saw the title, or I thought it was just okay.
Got it.
Okay. So starting with season 1, episode 1, we have our pilot.
I give that a 4. I thought it was good. I could imagine myself having, if I had no connection to the show at all, and I was watching that pilot for the first time, I would have probably been like, and I think I said it when we watched the pilot, I would have been like, oh, this is a strong pilot. This is really good. I should see what happens next. I wouldn't classify it as one of the pilots that I've seen in my life where I was like, oh, gotta watch the next one. So just solid 4.
Is there a character that jumps out at you from there? You met a lot there. You met Lorelai, and Rory, and Michelle, and Suki, and Lane and Mrs. Kim. And then we have the Gilmores, Richard and Emily. They have a name, obviously. We meet Dean. We also meet Miss Patty. And and then just like general characters in the background. So is there one that jumps out?
As you went down that list, a bunch jumped out during the list. But before you actually started the list, the one that jumped out was Suki. And I think the reason for that is because we talked so much about the fact that that character was recast. So in my mind, when I think of the pilot, my mind goes directly to that scene in the kitchen where we watch her, sort of going through all of the cooking stuff. And in my mind, I kind of always compare the two performances between Alex and Melissa, all the way up to the very end where she's like, Rory's the teacher. Doing that little dance thing, the way that both of them did it. So her for sure. But then I also like for Emily, I just remember her hairstyle was really weird, and I thought that that there was something that there, like, yeah, I felt like there was something a little off about that world yet. Like it hadn't really found itself, that the Richard and Emily. And Lane and Mrs. Kim are kind of a blur. It's hard for me to really remember exactly what was there and what I remember about that. And Mrs. Patty as well. Like the only thing about Mrs. Patty I remember was the scene in front of the dance studio, in which case I believe that was filmed on the lot. Not, it wasn't shot in Utah.
That's the main scene with Miss Patty.
Yeah. So then I'm asking myself, well, wait, was Mrs. Patty was she only in the real version? Was she not in the original one? Like Mrs. Patty got cast afterwards, right? Like, so I don't know. That Mrs. Patty comes to mind a little bit just with me asking those kinds of questions. And then Dean is sort of the same, where it's like I kind of like the two characters, the two different Deans are like kind of in my mind a bit. But anyway, to answer your first question, it's definitely Suki is the character that stands out.
This episode also has the distinction of being the one you've seen the most because you've seen it 3 times.
Correct. Yeah.
So hopefully that's part of why it's high up. You're not bored watching it over and over again.
Right. And I'm gonna watch it again. So yeah.
All right, let's go on to episode 2.
Yeah.
Lorelai's first date at Chilton.
Yeah. The Lorelai. Say it again.
The Lorelai's first date at Chilton. What do you remember of that?
Ooh. That one is fuzzy for me.
Okay, so let me read you the little blurb I have.
Yeah.
So Lorelai oversleeps and dresses like Daisy Duke, and of course Emily's there to witness it. Rory becomes Mary, and we meet a whole new set of characters in Paris, Madeline, Louise, and Tristan. In Stars Hollow, Mick tries to install the internet, and Emily has to be told to cut out very well.
Yeah. Okay.
We also see Babette, Maury, and Johnson, as well as Headmaster Charleston.
Right. Okay. So now do I rate it? Do I rate it before that or now?
Whenever you want.
Yeah. I would say that I would give that one would get a 3 for me. I sort of remember it, and these are some of the things I remember. I remember the girls outside the window looking in, like who is that new girl, right? Like Paris and her cohorts, her entourage. Yeah. I remember, of course, Mick installing the internet. I remember the opening with Lorelai coming down in the Daisy Dukes and in her like cut off jean shorts. I just said Daisy Dukes. I remember Shelley actually, or what? No, was it Phoebe actually mentioned when referenced back to her or said or compared Lorelai to, I think she said trailer park, and she was specifically referencing those little cutoff shorts. Because at first we were like, trailer park, what? And then it's like, oh, because of those little cutoff shorts that she was wearing. Yeah, I mean, I sort of remember the episode, but it didn't really burn me.
Okay, let's go on to number 3. I'm just trying to give us a movie.
Yeah.
We only have an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Kill Me Now.
Kill Me Now. No, that would be it too.
So Emily finables a golf day between Richard and Rory, and at first no one is happy about it. Rory surprises Richard with her interest, and they bond over books, travel, and club gossip. Meanwhile, Lorelai is planning the twins' wedding to another set of twins where no one can agree on a thing. Lorelai is thrilled with Rory's reaction to Richard's world and decides to argue about sweaters and bus size instead. We
Okay.
have an unnamed Kirk appearance, and we learned that Michelle doesn't like swans.
Okay. So that one gets a 3. Again, I remember it. I remember it okay. I will say that the part of the episode that I loved the most there was the interaction between Rory and Richard. I loved that. That was, I would say, when I really started to feel like the show was different from what I had kind of imagined, right? Like that, like the idea that like we had that our cast were going to be interacting with these like older characters, grandfather and grandmother characters in a really significant way. This was the first time that I sort of felt that and thought like, oh, this is going to be a little different. I sort of assumed that it was that those characters were very peripheral, or that they were sort of peripheral of the show. And I started to feel like, oh, this is going to be really like strongly about the relationship between Rory and her grandparents. Largely, it's going to be about that. So I really love that. I remember Kirk as the goose guy. He was holding a goose, or there was like a
Swans.
Swans, right? I don't remember much about the Michelle storyline.
Okay. The Deer Hunters. Rory crams after getting her first tea from Mr. Medina and oversleeps for her big midterm. On her way, a deer hits her and she is super late and flips out at being denied the exam, at which point she's called to the headmaster's office where Lorelai takes up her charge. Eventually, Mr. Medina calls to say she can have some makeup work and expresses his pleasure at encountering Lorelai. Meanwhile, Suki is on a mission to rectify a fine review of her magic risotto.
I remember it. I guess I could give that one. I probably could give
That's
that
probably
one
a 2, huh?
What do you mean a 2? I mean, like that's sort of the beginning of my least favorite relationship. So I'd probably give it a 2 for that reason. But I remember a lot of it. I mean, I remember the whole scene between her and Max when they meet for the first time in that classroom, and I remember I remember her coming into Headmaster Charleston's office and like trying to reverse things and it ended up kind of backfiring. I remember of course when Rory comes in and flips out. I remember that specifically. Remember that being the first time where I was thinking, oh, this really quiet, sweet, quiet girl has another side to her, like that I have a feeling is going to become part of this show as well. So I don't know. I mean, I kind of don't want to give it a 2 because I really liked it, but I really did not like Max calling her at the very end. So I thought that was like super appropriate. I'm gonna give it a 2 for that reason.
Good. This next one, I'm going to try to say as little as possible.
Mhm.
Sweet.
I love this episode. That's a 5. That's a 5. I mean, I love
It's
that
still
episode.
fun.
Every bit of that episode, every single thing. I loved the just how the whole town this was the first episode where the town was introduced as a character, right? Because we've been seeing like all these like characters show up individually. It's like not bad. But this is the first one where they all come together in a way that kind of forms its own character. And it begins when like we learn that Cinnamon has passed away and see how everyone in the town is getting that information. We learn and we sort of get the sense like, oh, okay, that's the thing about this town is that news spreads, like and that they all sort of collectively Leo, like it's, for me, it's like one of the scenes of Gilmore Girls in general. Like when I think of the show, I think there's a handful of scenes. It's the scene between Babette and Lorelai in the kitchen, where Babette's looking for medicine. I just loved it. Like that scene is just, for me, it's like just one of the best scenes in the entire series. It's got like amazing, just veteran comedian comedy with also just like all this like real, honest, beautiful, emotional sadness. A cat, which like just also amazing that they could do that. And the fact that the way that they kind of describe the cat, like sort of dying, like sliding across the room into the lamp, I find a little weird. I have a problem with the way that Pet might be killed by writers, but love this episode. I could talk about this episode for a while. Yeah.
It's good to know because you loved it from the minute you saw it, and I was really curious if it would fade in your mind. That's wow. All right, number 6 is Rory's birthday parties.
I remember that episode. I'm gonna give that episode a 5 as well. And you'll probably see a trend here on a lot of my 5s, because like that episode also ends in like a kind of like a collective town sort of thing, right? Because you have like the two different birthday parties, right? This was the second episode where my sort of intuition about like the quiet Rory having this other side to her that would come out like occasionally was sort of confirmed at the party when Rory just snaps at her grandmother, like really harshly for having done that. The cake. I really like this episode a lot. I'm gonna give it a 5. Yeah.
So I'm gonna actually stop you there because I want to ask you a question. Right
Yeah.
now, like from the beginning of the seasons, what were your initial impressions of like Rory, Lorelai, and Richard and the Gilmores? And I want to try and think of them at the beginning, because the next question is, I'd like at the end to say, how much do you think your impressions have changed through actually watching the show? Is that too hard?
So yeah, well, I'll try. At this point, I really liked Rory a lot. I just thought that she was despite that like kind of like thing where she just kind of snapped out of nowhere, which I think I interpreted more as a girl who was sort of holding a lot, and so I didn't really fault it. But I just thought in general she was a kind, sweet person who like was more influenced by a mother who was a little bit more selfish and snarky and not particularly nice. But loved her, but like, was the first person to like kind of like make fun of people, whatnot. And I got the sense that like Rory actually didn't really like doing that kind of stuff, but just, she'd always been exposed to it and sort of felt pressured to be like that. I know that even just stuff like the sweater, like her getting super obsessed about Rory wearing the sweater, like all these things sort of actually painted a negative picture in my mind for as childish, immature, selfish, and I guess I could probably, I don't know. I know that she raised her daughter on her own, and there's like so much about that like that should be admired. But the way that she was presented in those first several episodes, I just saw way too much of an immature mother to really really have a positive impression of the character. like I felt bad for her. And this sort of goes into it. I felt bad that like she had been, kept from that full other life, that that Lorelai had sort of just abandoned her and Richard, and took Rory and decided that Rory wasn't going to have a relationship to them. So I felt bad for those two. And Richard, and I think I had a really very positive impression. I especially was excited to see how Richard and Rory's relationship was going to evolve, because I thought the two of them were very similar. So as high an impression I had for Rory, I had same sort of high impression, like really good impression of Richard. But I've said it since the beginning. Lorelai did not start as a character that I loved.
It's fine. You're entitled. I hope nobody's coming at you from other places, but in my you're entitled. All right. Number 7, episode 7. Kiss and tell.
That I need more.
Dean kisses Rory and she chocolates because she can't figure out how to tell. She chocolates and she can't figure out how to tell Lorelai. But Mrs. Skin pours cold water on the whole thing by telling Lorelai about the kiss in the market where we buy food. Lorelai wonders why Rory didn't tell her and compares Dean to Christopher. She invites Dean to movie night to Rory's horror, but manages to smooth over the night. Dean knows that Lorelai's opinion matters to Rory, but she insists that Rory will not ride on his non-existent motorcycle.
I like this episode. I'm going to give this a 4. I do remember it. I especially remember that scene between Dean and Lorelai, and this was a moment where I'd say that this was probably the point at which I would have classified myself at that time as Team Dean. I really liked how he sort of handled that scene. I also, I think I remember saying it then. I actually also really liked Lorelai's sort of place in that whole scene. And I liked.
But do you remember how you reacted when she invited Dean?
Yes, I didn't like that at all. But I mean, that was designed to I liked it from a storytelling perspective, but I didn't dig it at all.
You compared her to Emily. You said this is exactly what Emily did.
Yeah. I mean, that was probably when we first started, or when I first started to think about the similarities between these characters, and the similarities that Lorelai has to Emily, especially in some of like the control stuff. It's interesting now thinking about it. I wonder how much Lorelai doesn't like Emily because their personalities are so similar. Like, or the areas where their personalities are similar. I know that they clearly they don't have the same personality, but they both have a control thing. They both definitely like want to control certain situations. And there is a my way about both of them,
I was going to say, I would actually say the personalities are similar to how they express themselves and how they go about their.
Correct. Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Love and more and snow. Okay.
I need a refresher.
Yes. We have our
I
first.
need a refresher on most of the titles, but I wasn't really paying close enough attention.
I feel like the 5 Cinnamon Sweet. You right away.
Yeah. There's a few of them that I.
Okay. First town hall meeting with Civil War reenactment, and Lorelai smells snow, which strands stories at her grandparents alone. Lane notices Rich Blumenfield, but Rory doesn't notice Lane. And Lane notices his hair and runs their hands through it, and then runs away to Lorelai. In fact, she runs away to Lorelai and Max, who is also stranded in Stars Hollow because of the snow. Lorelai comforts Lane about how all teenagers do stupid stuff. Meanwhile, Rory learns more about her parents after discovering an old photo album in Lorelai's room. Emily and Richard try frozen pizza, and Max is on the couch when Rory comes home.
I mean, I remember a lot of those little moments that you're talking about, the pizza, and I remember the photo album, and I remember the war reenactment. And, but in general, this episode's really hazy for me.
So are we talking maybe like
I'd say
one?
I'd say like probably a 1.
It also had Max for a big part of it if you weren't a big fan of Max.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Rory's stance. Rory
I
contemplates.
wait. I want to rate this one. This one is, if I'm right on the title, I'm pretty sure this is the because I'll kill you.
No.
Is that right? Is that not?
Oh yes, because I'll kill you. Yes.
Because I'll kill you, you idiot. Which is funny because it also sort of like that line that comes back with Rory. I love you because I love you. Later in the season.
Yeah, that's
but
when I thought you meant. I was like, no, I hope you comes way later. But
no. But I'll kill you because I'll kill you, you idiot. Is Dean to Tristan during the dance?
Yes. Yeah.
I'm gonna give this one somewhere between a 4 and a 5. I really like this episode a lot. But go, give me some of the other stuff just to make sure that I.
So I was going to mention this is actually where we got the bad boy
Aha.
reference to.
That's right. Okay, so yes, that's right. Because after the dance, then they go to Mrs. Patty's and then Mrs. Patty comes and she's like, "Oh, that's the bad boy." And I thought she said, "That's a bad boy."
So Rory convinces Dean to go to the dance. Laura moves her dress and hurts her back. Emily comes to see her off and takes care of Lorelai. Tristan and Paris, among others, lead Rory to Dean to leave early and hang out at the Staddies, where they fall asleep. In the morning, Emily and Lorelai get into a heated fight about Rory getting pregnant, which Lorelai then turns to Rory and accuses her of the same. And this is where we also have the mashed banana sandwich.
Yeah, we also have Paris and her cousin
Yes.
going to the dance together, and that of course becomes like this big like plot point of like, you know, don't tell people, and then she of course like blabs it all like herself in Paris fashion. The cousin tries to hit on Rory at one point.
Yes, definitely.
This episode was great fun. I like this a lot. I'm gonna give this a 5 for this episode.
Okay, I'm knocking it from 4.5 to 5.
Do it.
Forgiveness and stuff. Christmas time is chilly on all ends between all the mothers and daughters, which gets Lorelai disinvited from the Christmas dinner with the apple tarts. But Richard's work issues get to him and he ends up in the hospital. Luke drives Laura to the hospital while Emily tries to find out updates, and it turns out to be just angina. But it gets everyone emotional, and we also get the sweetest exchange between Richard and Emily, where she demands to go first, and we get that look between Lorelai and Richard.
Yeah, so this one is 5 for me for sure. I actually referenced this. I've referenced this episode a few times. Before we find out that Richard's in the hospital, that everything before that is a little fuzzy for me. But the moment that happens, that's like the episode just suddenly I remember like a ton of stuff, like everything from like Luke and Lorelai driving to driving there and her suddenly going through all her memories with her dad, and then her suddenly like he was a good dad, suddenly forgiving him for everything that she had been angry about throughout her life, like just on their way there. The look, of course, between Lorelai and Richard, that's the one that's like burned in me. more so than the speech with Emily, between Emily and Richard, which of course was an amazing speech and was like, you know, that was like one of Kelly Bishop's, like at that point in the series, was one of the moments where I was like, oh my gosh, it's incredible. The Emily and Luke, that was a really important moment to the whole larger plot, like the big arc of Lorelai and
You're
Luke, right?
idiots, but both.
Yeah, because that's the first time that Emily references them as a potential couple, where she's like, yeah, the idiots, the both of you, you're both, or
You're idiots.
you're idiots, the both of you're idiots, the both of you. Uh, yeah.
We also get
Love
the introduction of the Santa burger, which I think is a fan favorite reference in the show.
The Santa burger, refreshing.
So Lorelai gets Emily's still upset with Lorelai about the fight. So she tells her, don't bother coming to the Christmas dinner. I don't want to force you to do anything anymore. You know, I don't want to be evil to you, whatever. So she goes to Luke's because she's depressed. Rory goes to the party. And Luke cheers her up by making her a Santa burger.
Oh, right. Now I remember it. Go.
Okay. 11. Paris is burning. Things are going.
If you hear me pause, you probably need to read more.
Things are going well between Max and Lorelai, but she starts getting scared of the idea that Rory's getting attached and wants to pull away. Meanwhile, Paris' parents' divorce is getting nasty and being gossiped about at school. When Lorelai tries to leave Max and parents stay in children, Paris sees them kissing and spreads the news around the school. Max walks away after proclaiming it to be too hard and all too hard, and Suki passes out Jackson.
Well, I loved the whole Suki and Jackson plot line that went through this, all the way up to the ask out. But this has a lot of the Max plot line, which I didn't really love, and that, you know, the kissing moment. I remember a lot of this episode from that. So from that perspective, I'd probably give it somewhere between a 3 and a 4. But I wouldn't say that this was an episode that I was like super excited coming out of it. So I'd probably give it a 2 in that regard.
So we'll do a 2.5. Okay. Double date. Lorelai, Suki, Jackson, and Rory go out on a double date. Rory is not to have to be paired with someone like that. Meanwhile, Lane gets Rory to set up a double date with Dean's friend Todd, her new soulmate. Of course, Mrs. Kim discovers the ruse and the date is busted, although it was already a dud. This is where we get the first reference to the mom code.
Yeah.
And Lorelai's confirmation that I'm a babe.
Yeah. This was my first, I want to say that this was like one of, or my first episode where I was like really starting to like Lorelai. Which is funny because it's like because it's the first one where I feel like she's not the kid. Like, right? Like, they're like that mom code thing where she's like, I gotta tell her, sorry. Like, that's just like, I gotta do it. Unfortunately, like, that's the way it goes. I got the mom code. That's like, I loved that. I still remember it like clearly. I remember really loving that moment from Lorelai. And in contrast to like the sweater stretching out the sweater thing, it was like polar opposite. So as much as I didn't like Lorelai for like the sweater stretching type stuff that we had seen from Lorelai up until that point, this was like the opposite. Really like that part of Lorelai. And the more of that I see from Lorelai throughout the season, throughout the series, like the more I was liking Lorelai. But this was, I would say, like the first moment when we did, and all the stuff with like Todd and Lane, and it's really great.
So we're thinking 4?
Yeah, I'm gonna say a 4 on that one.
Concert interruptus. This is the Bangles concert.
Right. Yeah. Love that episode. I just forgot the name of it, but I love it. That one probably gets 5. I remember. It was the first of all exciting because it was like the first real episode that like kind of moves us out of that like kind of. I mean, I guess Connecticut small towny sort of place and kind of takes us into like a big city. It was like the first of what would be many or several band episodes where we get to see like a big famous band. I remember feeling like, wow, this is wild. It actually feels like the show is turned into a televised Bangles concert. Like like huge portions of that episode was just like enjoying the Bangles, be the Bangles. Loved again. This is another one like back to back Lorelai, right? Like this was the next episode where I was like, all right, I'm starting to dig Lorelai here a lot more when she's like walking through that hallway trying to find Louise and Madeline. You know, come on, let's go. You know, that was just that episode was a blast. That episode was fantastic.
Wow, I love that one too. The Dan Donna Reed show.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know that episode. So, correct me if I'm wrong. If that all happened in this episode, but does the watching of the Donna Reed show, his reaction to that, the follow-up fight with Rory and him in the town square, and then Rory dressing up in this kind of ridiculous costume to like kind of be sort of like make a joke about the whole thing. That all happens in one episode, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, great, good. So I remember the episode pretty well. I loved it. I love that episode.
All right, so
I'm gonna give a 5 on that one. Yeah.
This is also the first time you get to see Lane's filing system from under.
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah, and also this is another episode where I sort of like this is another one for me that got me into Dean. Not necessarily because of his whole point of view on the subject matter, but like I felt like this was like this was the reason why I was you know for a long time holding on to the idea that I was Team Dean. It's like this first season Dean felt so like he had so much more agency, right? Like he had more perspective on things, and I just loved how he was like, you know, he sort of was like you know, seeing Lorelai and Rory kind of laughing at somebody a character who he thought kind of reminded him of his own mother, how that kind of offended him, needed to talk about it. Just these aspects of Dean made the character feel much stronger for me in that first season, and I really loved it, and I love that interaction between the two of them in the town square. This episode in general, like it really has stuck with me.
Cool. All right, Christopher returns.
Yeah, I remember.
Chris comes to Stars Hollow, planning business and doing well, and sees the town, meets Dean, and everyone else. Emily puts together a dinner for Chris's parents, Stroll and Francine, which is just disastrous, and it opens very old wounds, with Richard throwing them out. We have the balcony romp between Chris and Lorelai, and Chris proposes, but Lorelai knows he is not ready.
We also have the OED.
Oh, okay. See, I told you I wasn't going to remember.
we have the Oxford English Dictionary in there. Of course, I'm going to remember this episode.
I was going to say we have the touching moments of Emily and Rory. Disappointment. You young lady person or existence have never ever been, not for 1 second, included on that list. Thought?
Yeah, I mean, this is a 5 for me. I love this episode, and if there's any like kind of you know, like a lot of my defense of the Christopher character probably comes from the fact that this episode is like just so strongly burned into me. I remember every bit of it. I was so fascinated by that character. You know, the fact that he like, you know, tried to buy the OED and you know, just like and that whole romp between him and Lorelai and like, you know, and then him proposing at the end and saying no and then driving off and like, you know, riding off and Lorelai saying, you know, kind of explaining to Rory being like kind of wanting him back in their life, like, yeah. I remember probably like I actually feel like I kind of felt like Rory felt. I kind of I feel like I was in Rory's shoes.
You wanted them to work it out.
Yeah, I wanted them back. I found the episode so cool, so fascinating, so interesting. He added this new dynamic that I was so like, you know, just wanting to learn more, and then that's it. He's just gone, you know, like on the motorcycle. And I felt like the reason he's gone is because he asked to stay, and that's it. No, I mean, that might not have been why he thought. I mean, maybe it's because Lorelai understands this thing about him that I don't. But I was in Rory's shoes there, thinking, well, why? Well, why does he like? Why can't you guys just work it out? You know, because I wanted more of that character.
Right. Star-crossed lovers and other strangers.
Was this the production at the
No, this is the 3-month anniversary and the special present of the car.
oh right. Oh right. Okay. Yeah. This is a really good episode.
We also get Rachel coming back into town, who we were introduced
Oh,
to
right,
in Constant
yes.
Practice. And Lorelai gets a disastrous setup from Emily with Chase.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I would probably rate this a 5. I remember most of it, and that scene between Rory and Dean in that car is one of the best scenes in the series. Like, regardless of how you feel about Dean, you know, one just from an acting performance standpoint and from like a story performance, it's just awesome. The whole thing, like her, you know, how she reacts to him when he says it, you know, how he reacts. It's really cool, and then it sets up a lot of the problems that are going to be coming. Like you know, from this point onward, from that moment when he says "I love you," from that moment forward, like you can actually track back all of the problems between like Rory and the Jess Dean dynamic all the way through to Lindsay, like to the end of like to the last thing that we see of Dean, like in season 5 or whatnot, right? Season 5 or
Yeah.
you know, like you can just track all of it back, like every little part of the drama, the characters, whatnot. You can track it all back to that one moment thing.
Yeah, to the repercussions of this one.
Yeah, it's like it's like you know, it's like just a butterfly flaps its wings on one side of the world and creates a hurricane kind of thing. You know, it's like that's the things like that one thing he said, and like that just caused all the problems all the way to season 5.
Which takes us to the breakup part 2.
Yeah, first episode where they start the episode like right from the same spot that they left off before, and we hear her say that he broke up with her, but we aren't totally sure whether that's her interpretation of the situation or whether there was a conversation in the car before she walked in the door.
And then we also get the Tristan complication in there.
Oh, yes, that's right. That's right. That's the party.
Yeah.
That's the party, and he, of course, him and Summer, is that right?
Yes.
Him and Summer have a little breakup, and he's really sad about that. That's our kind of the first moment where you see like the Tristan character is not just this like obnoxious entitled guy, but he kind of like softens for a bit. And there's this moment I kind of felt bad for Tristan because I really thought that he liked Rory a lot, and that was just didn't know how to express how he felt about her. And this one little moment, I think he thought maybe, like this one moment when actually like he was at his best, and it would have been, under any other circumstances, maybe Rory would have been interested in him, but because really Rory was just ultimately in a different headspace, couldn't really be in it. So it's kind of like a sad moment for Tristan there as well. That's a good one. That one's either a 4 or a 5.
Okay. I just want to also mention this is when Lorelai reconnects with Max, and they decide to start talking on the phone to solve quote unquote this. So just because he comes back after. So they didn't miss a
Is that the weird one where she goes over his excuse me, where she goes over to his apartment and like they just like stand up and smash into each other?
Yeah.
And we're supposed to find that in any way endearing or romantic or sexy. It's like the most awkward, like ouch, you guys hurt yourselves.
Yeah. We meet a cute Korean future doctor, Henry Shaw.
I like Henry was a much bigger character in the show than I thought that he was, just having heard the name Henry Shaw.
All right, that brings us to the third Lorelai. Grandmama Trix comes to town and offers Rory an early shot at her trust fund, which brings out Emily's fears, which she then spills into Lorelai's ears. Rory convinces Tristan to try and date Paris, but when Paris finds out after he avoids another date, she turns on Rory again.
Sorry, I hit the wrong. I was trying to hit the mute button. I hit the little airplane. Yeah, I remember most of this episode. I would probably, from a memory standpoint, give it a 4. I like the episode. Probably also a 4. I loved the introduction of Trix. I thought that was exciting. Of course, I knew that character was coming because I knew Marion Ross was on the show, but I didn't really totally know what the character was like. So that was delightful. The whole Paris and Tristan stuff was fun and a little gut wrenching, I guess, at times, because it was sad to see Paris get really like, a character who we've seen like be so kind of hard suddenly sort of soften for a bit, and only realize that like that she had, that the whole thing had been set up, and just feel sort of embarrassed about that. I'm gonna give this one a 4. I also really loved, like, it was the first time that we got to see a different kind of Emily now because of the dynamic of Trix coming into the situation.
Yes.
That was really, really fun. And then just the whole trust fund part of the plot was just a great twist on the original part of the plot, which is we give you money for children, right? Running this new plot twist, which was, well, you may not need her money anymore.
So now we're at Emily in Wonderland.
The name of this episode really like rings a bell. Like I feel like if I was,
Hear a little?
yeah.
So Emily visits Stars Hollow to find new antique sources. and visits the Independence Inn, where she is horrified by Cushhead. So she creates Rory a green room at her house. Lorelai, meanwhile, is being shown a picture of a rundown inn at the edge of town by Rachel, who mentions that Luke doesn't seem to believe that she's serious and asks Lorelai to speak up if she gets the chance. Rune comes to live at the inn.
I would say that I remember. I'd probably give this one like a 3 in memory. Well, no, I'm trying to find this 4 in memory. I remember all of everything that you're describing. Especially the the room that Rory gets and Emily coming and seeing the shed. I remember how Emily just like kind of like backs away and just like rushes off. I remember kind of thinking like, where you going? Like just kind of leaving
Yeah.
there.
I think she couldn't bear to consider
No, I
the
know.
sunglasses you had to bring.
No, that's right. The sunglasses. That's right. Yeah. And of course, Rune, like the return of Rune. It's fun. Yeah, I would probably give this one somewhere between a 3 and a 4. In terms of both memory and how I felt.
So this is a misleading title, but it's PSIFO ... Okay. Rory fights with Lorelai for not telling her about the new developments between her and Max, and runs to Emily and Richard. Elaine studies with Dean, but keeps it from Rory, who of course finds out. Lorelai confronts Dean and discovers the real reason for the breakup. And sorry, these notes are all over the place. Lorelai helps Luke pick up a present for Rachel and redresses him at the same time, which Rachel does not seem to mind. And finally, Lorelai and Max discuss why she has not been telling people about the relationship, and Lorelai begins to tell others.
This one has faded. This one has full faded. So much of what you said, I it's like just hazy. So I would give this somewhere 1 between.
All right. And then Love, Daisies, and Troubadours. Luke is spending all his time at Lorelai's, and Rachel finally admits what's happening and leaves. The town gets a troubadour which Taylor wants to get rid of, but the town and Rory come to his defense, and he gets to stay. Tristan pesters Rory, and Paris gets to become the editor of the school newspaper. Luke and Max get into a contest, which leads to a fight, and he proposes, but Lorelai refuses because of the lack of magic, music, and 1,000 Young Daisies. Then Dean shows up at the school and gets to hear Because I Love You, Idiot, and 1,000 Yellow Daisies show up at the end.
Yeah, I mean, I remember large portions of this. I didn't really love that moment with the daisies in there.
Come on, John.
I remember kind of feeling like it was a little over the top. I remember saying that I felt like it was a little over the top.
I remember the discussion where I said it was unprofessional to be done at work.
Yeah.
I objected to the work thing.
It was just a little much, you know, like I think, I don't know. I felt like it was over the top, but she seemed to like it, so I guess that's fine. I would probably put this one somewhere between a 2 and a 3.
Okay, so that's the end of season 1. Thankfully, almost takes us an hour to get here. So my question for you, I have 2 questions. What would you rate as your favorite episode of the entire season?
I would probably do Cinnamon's Wake.
Cinnamon's Wake.
Cinnamon's Wake, yeah. I'd probably do that. I mean, some of those other ones that I rated really high are up there, but for me, Cinnamon's Wake just is so much the heart and spirit of the show in general. For me, it is because like I just love the town. I love the world, and it was like the first introduction to the larger world as a character.
And Rory's clearly coming out as your favorite or most connected.
She's my favorite. She's my favorite in this season for sure.
So what do you think
I
of the
would.
storyline? Like, do you like the storyline this year? This season? Would you change anything? Would you want to add to it?
No, I mean, no, I really loved it. I think at this point in the series, I would have I thought that this was her story, that Rory was our protagonist. I don't feel that way anymore, by the way, and I think I remember saying that I thought that Rory was the protagonist, or being unsure of it, and but just feeling like I was, and that was mostly because I was mostly putting myself into Rory's shoes. Probably because I enjoyed putting myself into Rory's shoes, where I didn't really enjoy putting myself into Lorelai's shoes during this season. And I remember hearing fans sort of kind of pushing back on that idea that Rory was the protagonist. Now I understand exactly why, because I would not say that that's the case. That's how I feel about the script anymore. But in season 1, I really did. And I was invested in her story, and I felt like it was the story of a girl who was sort of coming into her own. She was learning about who she was, independent of her mother, and little things like the snapping, at the birthday party, and like snapping about the D and starting her and getting the D getting the D and the starting their exam, coming late to class. Even back to the very first episode, which was like, I don't think I want to go to Chilton anymore because I've met this guy. Like it was just all like for me, it felt like that was what this season was about. It was about this girl sort of learning who she was and the things that she wanted to do. And so I was like, that was the story that I was on. And because Dean was so much a part of that awakening, my love of that character was influenced largely by how I knew his part played on that larger narrative of Rory's. And I know that like Lorelai had lots of her own story on there, but I just wasn't into the Max storyline. I just wasn't into it. I don't know what it was, but I just couldn't really get behind it. Maybe it was partly because I was influenced by aspects of the Lorelai personality early on. I just couldn't relate to. But I felt the opposite about Rory and Dean. I was really just super invested in that.
Overall, you rank this season pretty high. You have 15 episodes that are at 3.5 or higher.
Oh,
so you remember quite a bit.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I did. I liked it, and when I talk about like not liking characters, that's I'm really more speaking from and I've said this many times. Like I love all these characters because I love the story, but but when you ask me whose shoes am I in, who am I most invested in this season is Rory, for sure, and that's why I really truly believe that the series, the Gilmore Girls series, was really her story. And everyone else was sort of serving that story. If I had to choose one.
Cool. Ready for season 2?
Oh yeah.
We're only 1/3.
But wait, we're an hour in, but we started a little late. I think that we're good. I think that we're in good shape.
All right. Sadie. I'm gonna go ahead and start just reading you the thing. Unless you really remember something, you can cut me off. But
I remember this episode. I remember it beginning with like everybody walking around town with yellow daisies in their hands, Yeah, Sadie, married lady. But read the rest of the
Okay, so Lorelai struggles with the decision to accept Matt's proposal, but she does in the end. Dean meets the Gilmores, and Richard is especially cold and rude about Dean's future plans. Suki begins planning Lorelai's bridal shower and calls midnight Emily before Lorelai has announced it to her. Elaine's parents are sending her to Korea.
I would rate this episode. Maybe like around a 3. I remember most of it. I don't remember. It's not burned enough in my memory to say that I loved the episode.
Okay, hammers and nails. Rory realizes she has a lot.
But anyway.
No, go ahead, please. No.
This was the construction episode. This was where
Yeah.
this was where Rory does it's like the Habitat for Humanity thing. Is that what it's like where she's building houses? This is our first introduction to the Tom character.
Yeah, but he's not actually Tom.
He's not Tom at this point. I know, which is a trend, of course, on the series. They renamed the people that they really like working with. But as also the personality of the character is very different. But yeah, I remember Rory's hilarious little hammer. Read the rest of it.
So she has a lot of work to do, which causes tension with Dean, who wants to spend more time with her. So this is also the first time we really get the fighting over.
This was the episode where she hops off the bus, and she's just completely like spent.
Yeah.
Kind of, just all a little dirty, like you could just tell, hair a little messy. And he's just sitting there at the bus stop. And it was the first Dean moment where it was like, this season 2 Dean is a little different than season 1 Dean. It felt clingy for the first time. This was the first time that we're kind of, where he's like being a little pushy and a little needy. And I'll give this one. I'll give this. Well, go on. Was there anything? Any other things that you want to remind me of?
Lorelai tells Emily about her engagement, but doesn't get a reaction, so she confronts her with Max and learns that Emily already knew from a complete stranger. She has her bridal shower in the middle of town and asks Luke to be there just because he needs to be. Jackson gets nervous with Suki's wedding excitement and offers to move in together, which Suki laughs off. Lorelai meets up with Emily over picking a veil or a
I remember that.
Especially by me.
Yeah.
And Blake leaves.
Yeah. That this is a good episode. Just all around. This is a really good episode. I'm gonna give this one a 4. Even though it's hard for me to rate a lot of the Max storyline stuff high, this episode gets some really high marks, especially for that final scene between Lorelai and Emily, where she's like, "I'm sorry, I really should have told you, but this is why I didn't tell you." And Emily, it's the first time I feel in the series where we see Emily bring down her Emily wall and be vulnerable and sweet. And for that reason alone, the episode gets a really high mark. She's like a tiara.
I love the vulnerability.
I do. I love it. It's the reason why I really love the Emily character so much because when she gets vulnerable, it just feels so good. It should be like, when a character who's always vulnerable gets vulnerable, it doesn't mean anything. But when a character who's always got this ironclad wall up gets vulnerable, that is satisfying.
You earned that one.
You earned it. Yeah.
You worked for it.
Exactly.
All right, we get now red light on the wedding night. The town gets its first red light. Do you remember?
No, sorry, I was just chewing I have my dinner with me as well, just because he's always involved on my dinner. So I don't want to chew while Mike is on, so I'm like slipping them in really quickly, which is also very helpful for you reading these things, because then it gives me a little time to chew. It's a salad and it's especially crunchy tonight.
Okay, well, it's a habit for us to have the crunch sounds. So the town gets its first red light. Lorelai continues to plan her wedding, but is nervous about Max spending the night. She also questions with Max about where he fits in with her and Rory. Dean tries to give Max pointers about the two women, and at the bachelorette, after Emily shares her experiences of being nervous before her wedding, Lorelai calls Chris. Luke builds her a hubba, and Lorelai wakes up Rory and Night to pack for a road trip because there is no wedding.
Yeah, this is a cool episode, which is very interesting because I don't think that I actually thought about this aspect of it. But this episode has 3 major love interests in it. At this point in the storyline, I'm not really thinking about that because the Luke character hasn't yet even fleshed out as a love interest. We just have hints of it. But we've got Luke building her the hubba at the very end, like kind of giving us some insight of what's to come with these characters. We've got Christopher being called at the bachelorette party, like telling us that there's this thing from her past that's always going to continue to be holding on her, and like a constant aspect of conflict throughout the rest of the story. And then we've got like this character who is sort of like he's like the casualty of he's the character. He's like he's the character who is sort of on the receiving end of all of the past commitment issues and fear and whatnot that happens, in regards to like Christopher and wanting to find that.
He's also the newest one.
And he's the newest, right? So it's like past, present, and future, right?
Yeah.
It's like Christopher is the past, Max is the present, and Luke is the future. But all 3 of them are in the episode, and it's not until now, after I've watched as much of the show as I've watched, that I actually pick up on that. I don't think that I picked up on that during the episode itself. This is a great episode, and that ending is just like, this is a 5 for me as well.
So I feel like I predict what the next one will be, but it's the road trip to Harvard.
Sorry, crunching. Love this episode.
Yeah, I think you too.
Love it because it's a new world. It's like a whole new world. It's like we've now opened up the Stars Hollow world into like another new environment. That's interesting, right? Like New York is a part of the larger Gilmore Girls world, right? We established that it's this new corner of it, and we go back to it again in other seasons, right? And Harvard and then like Yale, like there are these just like extensions of the larger geographical and historical world as well, right? Like Yale has this, like, obviously we haven't gotten to that yet, but like Yale has this, not only like is it a part of geographically a part of the world, it also has this history of the family. Anyway, so any episode like that has some of that kind of stuff in it, I'm gonna love it, and this is like a really great one.
Perfect. So then let's go on to Nick and Nora, Sid and Nancy.
The title is very familiar.
Someone in the audience, or a couple in the audience, are very upset. A new addition comes to Stars Hollow in the form of Luke's nephew.
Oh, right. Did you actually see people in the audience get upset, or you're just guessing? Yeah. Yeah. I remember this episode. I remember. Give me a little bit more of the summary just so I can make sure that I don't miss anything. But I've got a bunch of this.
The first day of school shows Rory attempting to get into a truce with Paris, but not on Paris' side, for speaking Story the wrong info and a silly assignment, and then gets her to interview Max, where they get to express their disappointment on how things turned out in the end. Meanwhile, Jess seems to cause issues wherever he goes, and Luke is in denial as to how much he has taken on.
Yeah. This is a cool episode, and you know, as much as I did not really dig the Max character, I love that scene between Max and Rory. Just love it.
Sorry, I was clicking around. Yeah, it's a favorite of mine. I actually just got someone reminding me to harvest, but I couldn't tell that
Oh, harvest.
or not.
Harvest people. Wait,
Yes,
I thought this was a 2-hour event. This is
I did it for an hour and a half because I didn't want people to feel like they had to stay up till
Got it.
midnight.
Got it. They're like, Mary, we need to harvest. Like, we can't be up all night. I love that moment between Rory and Max. It's like it's my favorite Max moment in the entire series. Just like,
Well, I looked at it looks back because one of the issues that like Lorelai Max had was how was Max going to fit in with Rory. And here you see that, it probably wouldn't have been an issue because they both wanted to make it work as Rory and Max.
Totally.
It's probably something else.
And correct me if I'm wrong. The line specifically is, I wish you had been my stepdad. She just my stepfather, and then he says back to her, so do I.
Something like that. I don't know.
Something like that, like specific. That and he's so calm and chill about it, but you can see he's just deeply sad about it. It's a moment where, and maybe this is also part of it, right? Because as I said, admittedly, I was in Rory's story, like really heavily invested in what was going on with Rory. And this is a moment where Rory and Max are kind of connected in a way that I mostly didn't see from the Max character. And so that may also influence how I felt about Max all of a sudden.
And speaking of connections, how did you feel about Jess when you first met him? Because he connects with Rory too.
Yeah. I didn't really like him. I wasn't a big fan of. I was not a big fan of. Yeah, I mean, I wasn't into it, and I've said this before. Like for me, like if I can feel like I would be like if I could imagine myself in real life connecting to that person, then I could probably then I would connect to them in the show. Like I never really felt like, at least at this point in the series, connect to Lorelai. That's why I feel the way I do about Lorelai at this point in the series. And that was the same with Jess. Like I was like, I don't think I would have anything to. I don't know. I wouldn't really enjoy my time around that guy at all. And also, so we're introduced to him kind of like, just doing whatever he wants, like treating the town like they're this just like toy that he can sort of play with. These are people that I've like already developed like a lot of my own love and care for. My favorite episode, as you know, is Cinnamon's Wake, right? Like, so to see him like messing with all of those people from Cinnamon's Wake just got under my skin a little bit.
So you were really hurt when Pierre Paul disappeared, right?
Yeah, like,
come on.
Yeah, and like, and these are all like Rory's friends, and they all care about Rory, and so I'm supposed to care about the guy who's like, kind of, like laughing and making fun of like all of these people and making fun of the town, like it's a ridiculous, stupid thing. I don't think that it's a ridiculous, stupid thing. So I didn't really love that from that character.
But it's conflict. You love conflict.
Oh yeah. Again, like I said, I really love how the character influences the larger story. Yeah, sure.
So would you say 4 or 5 for Nick Norris and Nancy?
That's gonna probably get a. I'm gonna get that a 5. Because I mean I really like that. I liked all of the sort of juicy storytelling that happened.
Presenting Lorelai Gilmore. Knowing that it will make Emily happy, Rory agrees to participate in a debutante ball, and both Dean and Chris agree to accompany her. Christopher shares about his changed lifestyle, new car, new job, and new girlfriend. Lorelai worries about her parents fighting, including Richard wanting to actually avoid the ball, where Richard admits that he knows he is being pushed out at work.
Sorry.
No worries. True.
This episode ends with that really awkward thing between Chris and Flora, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Where he basically reveals that like he's with somebody else after she tries to kiss him and he doesn't.
After he actually kisses her.
He kisses her.
Yeah,
right?
he kisses her multiple times in the episode, like good night kisses and hello kisses, and then she finally goes in to like give him like a.
She gives it right. Okay, so good. Clarity there, because her kiss was different from his good night and hello kisses. Like she's like, I want to get with you, and he's like, oh no, like we need to actually clarify that. And that actually led to big discussions about whether all of that harmless little flirting and kissing and all that stuff throughout the night was actually like appropriate, and whether it led her on and got her to the place where she felt comfortable enough to be as forward as she was and then make a fool out of herself. So this was the first moment where I got from the larger fandom how much they really can't stand this character, or at least portions of that. Yeah, I remember all of this episode. I think this is a great episode.
Perfect. So we're giving that one.
Yeah, I'll give it a 5.
All right. Like mother, like daughter. I feel like I know how you're gonna do it on this one. Rory gets approached about participating more at school, and Lorelai too. Are you gonna say it, John? Do you know what's coming next?
This is the one where
P to start to S.
oh right, yes. Okay, yeah, no. I love this episode. Yeah, love this episode. Love that whole part of the larger world. It's awesome. Does this episode also Matt's not in this episode, is
No, that's his fault.
Okay. Okay.
No,
Yeah.
but there is a thing about Luke flirting with Jill's mom, and Lorelai goes up to him and says, could you not combine our worlds, and flips out on her.
Okay. Yeah.
Justified.
Yeah. Yeah, I loved all of that. I love yeah, just the whole puffs thing and is this episode the one where Rory sits at the table with Puffs and without knowing and Paris walks by in the background and then walks off camera and then slowly walks backwards on camera and looks at Rory there. Yes, this episode is just a hard 5 for me.
It's also the one where both Emily and Lorelai model in matching clothes.
Correct. Yes, that's right. I do remember that. And of course, the way it ends with them going in there and then the SWAT team comes in pointing guns at them. No.
John, I think you went on to another show.
Sorry. No, but I mean, I could imagine myself over years, maybe thinking over time that's the scene. I start to transform and seem in my memory until it suddenly becomes this like everyone on the ground, you know, and all the bots are like being handcuffed and whatnot.
I mean, I think Headmaster Charleston was scary enough. I don't think we need a SWAT team to come in there.
Yeah, that's what I'm
And
about.
in fact, it's one of those episodes where when you speak about like Rory coming into her own and setting herself, she fights back on him and says, you know, you told me I have to do this stuff. You don't know about my life outside of school. So you made assumptions that I'm paying a price, you know.
I love that. I love that. All of the stuff where Rory is just like a firebrand, just finding her voice, like just and that was just everything that I loved about these early seasons.
All right.
Not everything, but that was one of the big things that I loved about it.
So now we get to the ins and outs of ins. And your favorite character of
Don't say
all.
it. Don't say it. Don't say it. It's like the Scottish play. You can't even say it.
The owner of the inn comes to town, and Lorelai feels guilty about her plan because Lorelai and Suki are trying to reach out to the owners of that old B&B and are told that the owner will not sell. When Lorelai speaks to
the name that shall not be spoken, or she that will shall not be named. What's the Harry Potter thing? Yeah, I think it's she who shall not be named. Yeah.
assures Lorelai to proceed, and in fact, the sooner the better, which leads Lorelai to panic on Suki. Town antics cause Luke to have to defend Jess against the whole town, and Rory confronts Jess about it, and he seems to soften and attempt to help Luke. Emily confronts she shall not be named about why she didn't send Lorelai home all those years ago.
This is a 5 for me. This episode. Even with she who shall not be named, because I remember every bit of it. Like I remember it really strongly, and it's a really good episode. There's a lot to discuss in it, and you know, it's the beginning, really, like, or not the beginning. I mean, obviously the you know, we've already established that there's this like old in, you know, but this is like a huge part of like the early foundation for what will become the Firefly, or sorry, the Dragonfly. Sorry,
Yeah.
Different show. The Dragonfly. Yeah, I know you like that show. And so it's just a show that really like it's a strong memory for me, and it's like, you know, sort of the impetus for like a big joke, that a running joke that is in our community. And for those who don't know, I've been joking about that character since she was introduced, because I just found the character, and still do sort of find the character so overly sweetly that you know, the joke at the time was like what's the catch here? Like, you know, this character is just like so ridiculously sweet, and seems to be so perfectly written everywhere that it almost feels a little bit like I've said it before, a Scooby-Doo villain, you know, like a character who you're supposed to like think is really like perfect, and then she'd be just a perfect Scooby-Doo villain. I think if you pulled off that mask, like, you know, like pulled off the mask of like the zombie or the monster or the ghost, like having her underneath there just seems right. But I also will say, for those of you who do find the joke a little over the top, just consider the fact that it's a joke that she herself might actually make, because that's something that the character was doing a lot in the episode itself to Michelle. My joke is also inspired by that. For those of you who are looking.
Run away, little boy. The jealousy. So this is the one you referenced before with the show, the school show. A jealous Dean watches over Rory and Tristan as they practice Romeo and Juliet for school, which leads Rory to worry that Dean will find out about the kiss from the party. Eventually, Tristan is actually kicked out of school and sent to boarding school, which means that which means Paris steps in his shoes. Lorelai tries to figure out who gifted her an ice cream maker as a wedding gift. Lane and Henry chat through an intermediary. Lorelai goes out on a date from school, who turns out from her school, turns out to be much younger than her, to the ridicule of everyone around her, and to Luke's exasperation.
I remember large portions of this episode. Of course, I remember all of the stuff related to the children play and all of the dynamics between Tristan and Dean and and Tootsie's Market and coming into Tootsie's Market mentioning that they're having a rehearsal and going over. I remember this as being sort of one of our moments where we kind of feel like Dean was just like being way too possessive and a little too, I think almost a little aggressive in regards to his, in terms of his relationship with Rory. But I will say a lot of the other stuff is kind of hazy to me. And so for that reason, I'm going to give it like somewhere between the 2 and the 3. This is also when Tristan goes away. Like this is like the moment where it's like, goodbye, Tristan. You have been a fun addition to the series, but now you are leaving us.
It's also like a feeling of like I invested so much in this, and you're just
and now you're just like literally. Like, it just really felt like and scene, like and you're gone, right? And you really didn't like. I did feel like that about other characters who left. Like I kind of was like, that character will probably be showing up at some point again, and that there's just too much there, right? Whereas like Tristan really felt like that was just the closing of that book.
right. The Bracebridge dinner.
I like that. Sorry, I had a cherry tomato. But
No, I don't want to look. That's funny though. When a large Vietnamese activity cancels the reservation, Lorelai invites the whole town to come instead. It includes her parents. They seem to be in a better mood until Richard reveals that he quit work without talking to Emily. Snow and horse-drawn carriages ride lead to romantic atmospheres between Luke and Lorelai and Jess and Rory, which Dean is starting to notice. Lee is back.
Great episode. I'm gonna put that one at a 5. Somewhere between a 4 and a 5. Remember everything. Love the Bracebridge dinner. This was great because it was so clearly like everyone direct your attention to Richard Gilmore. We are about to go on a ride with this character. Because it felt like a new story had just been started with all of that. Stuff with Rory and Jess is now starting to heat up. Where he kind of like hops onto that wagon, like just surprising her, just like I'm gonna jump on there. Sorry. And then of course like the Gilmore line, the ride together. That was also like a big part of that larger series-wide narrative. I like this episode a lot. I remember that this was the episode where I was like, I'm not sure that that's actually real. I think that's a screen behind them.
Yes.
They were going
We were
around
going back and forth.
and I was going back and forth on it, right? And we never really got clarity on it. But the main thing is that
Didn't vote that down for next time Val is there. Maybe she can Valerie takes around.
maybe. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how much of that stuff was ever shot on a set with cameras. The reason why, and it's very possible that was live, but the reason why I felt like it seemed very weird that it would be, is that it was all so steady. It was all so perfectly smooth, and I feel like that's not like if it was on set, the camera would have been moving. If it was on a steady cam, it would have at least been swaying a little bit, right? Like because even steady cams can't like stay perfectly still, you know. And the horses and the carriage and all of that noise would have made it really difficult for sound to pick up really good sound. But that it's very possible that the whole scene was ADR, and because of that, there was a little bit of a falseness to the scene that I interpreted as potentially being a screen, you know, that they were shot against. But that strikes me, that whole moment, I remember strike me as like there's something really fake about this. On that. But in general, really love the episode.
I was gonna say, you know, someone like me, a layman, I didn't notice anything until you said, I think it looks weird. I'm thinking, oh, okay. Precisely.
It might not have been weird, but you know.
It's just, I don't have the eye for it. When you can tell the difference between digital and film. I still can't. Like, I've heard you mention it, but to me they look the same, so I just don't have the eye for it. I don't know if other people in the audience do. But that being said, I love hearing that stuff. Like, I love hearing that someone can see a difference because it just shows that there's such depth and such like layers to things that I've never picked up on before. So I love being, exposed to that.
Yeah, totally.
Secrets and loans. There are termites, and no names will take Lorelai's calls. PSAT results have come in, and Paris wants to know Rory's. Rory defies Lorelai and tells Emily about their issues, who arranges to co-sign a loan together, but of course, it's never string-free. Blaine becomes a cheerleader and hides from Rory, and this is the episode where we get to see Jackson's famous PJs.
I remember bits and pieces of it. I remember everything that you just described. I still feel like the most of the narrative of that episode has sort of gotten a little hazy to me, so I put that probably around 2. I do remember the whole like through line with Lorelai from the termites through to like to Emily at the office with her, using her Emily ways to try and the opposite. Lorelai refusing to let Emily do that, and of course the person just not giving her the loan until Emily could sort of chime in and say, if I was able to lend that, then that's what happened, right? Essentially.
Sorry, I'm speaking, not realizing I was muted. I was saying, basically the guy said to Lorelai, I can't give you the loan unless someone is willing to co-sign, and Emily had insisted on going into the meeting with her.
Right, and then that's the moment where Emily kind of gives her a little smile.
Yeah.
Because up until then, like she's like, you need to be quiet. You are coming in, that's fine, I'll let you come in, but you do not say a word. This is my thing, I'm doing my thing. And that's the moment where Lorelai kind of realizes, like, oh, okay, like, if my mother were to, or my parents were to, then I could get this.
And then I remember we had a big discussion about, like, well, did Emily always plan on asking for something after, or was that something that came, genuinely came later because, Lorelai tried to guilt her and say, what now? And she got really offended.
Yeah.
There was a big discussion about Emily's intentions.
Yeah. And then the lame cheerleading thing is just about one of the most bizarre aspects of the whole series for me.
They dropped it. It was a 1 episode thing, and they dropped it. Like
I know.
She kept doing, but the cheerleading they just
dropped it. It came out of nowhere, and I still remember that really weird little cheer routine that she does near the end of the episode. episode.
Yeah.
And just like even that seemed like an episode of Twin Peaks or something all of a sudden.
And I think the point was that like Lane was influencing their music choices, so she was trying to be cool. But again, like it didn't go anywhere. It seemed to have been something they used just for this episode to say there's issues between them. Now that they're like Dean isn't Lane anymore, because at one point Lane was upset about Dean taking Rory away, but now Dean's not Lane anymore, so they have to show something else, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was weird. I still give that episode like a 2.
Yeah. Okay. So next we have, going back to what you said, the new arc for Richard. Richard in Stars Hollow. Emily's at her wit's end with Richard at home, so she arranges for him to spend the day in Stars Hollow, where he critiques Lorelai's business style and clashes with Dean when Dean finally delivers Rory's car to her. Favorite line is, "How tall are you anyway? Why? You want to dance?" Paris also comes to Stars Hollow to find the seedy underbelly of the town and expose it. Turns out the story is censorship and family values due to Rory's warning about an inappropriate video cover. But Jess has that taken care of.
This one is fuzzy to me. I mean, I remember the car delivery. I remember, Richard needing to get out of Emily's, like Emily just being kind of fed up with him being around the house, and him hanging out for the day with Lorelai. Lorelai needed to sort of get rid of it. But it's all like little bits and pieces. So I would give that one somewhere between like a 1 and 2 in terms of like it's sort of lives with me after all these months.
It feels like
in Gilmore Time, years in Gilmore Time.
That brings us to the next one. At Tiskett and Taskett. The stars.
Oh, I know this episode.
That's a 5.
Yeah, this is a 5 for me. But continue with the.
So this one I haven't played for because there's just way too many stories. So Jess outwits Dean and Rory loses her bracelet. Kurt gets Subi's basket because Jackson's upset Subi won't become home to him to move in together, ends up proposing instead. Patty has random men bid on Lorelai's until she forces Luke to buy it instead. Lane sets up a ploy to spend time for Henry, but a broken phone ruins it and Henry chooses to move on. Mrs. Kim finds out about him.
This is one of the best episodes of the entire second season.
So that's going to answer my question later about what's your favorite episode of the season.
It's probably this one. It just delivers so much in so little time, right? Like there's so many big things happen. It's great. Like proposals and the Dean and Jess confrontation, the losing the bracelet, and it's awesome. And like Kirk is hilarious in the episode, and just it's just I know it's a fan favorite, and it's so clear why. It's just such a quintessential perfect. It's got the whole like Luke and Lorelai talking about things. It's like that through line is sort of building out. I remember thinking about the whole Henry Cho thing. I remember even thinking in this episode how like I was like, oh, I kind of like Henry Cho, like, which was funny because Henry Cho, the leaving of Henry Cho is like responsible for the existence of my character on the series. But it was like an example of how like I just didn't know anything about that Henry Cho character, and I got kind of into that whole storyline, and I really felt for that character.
But I mean, she still could have had a man, even if she had a boyfriend.
I know, but I mean, just from my writer's brain is thinking like, yeah, but if you would build something like it. So that's sort of how I it's how I feel about. We'll get into it. I sort of feel like that character leaving, opened up the possibility possibility for that storyline to grow. Anyway, but we'll get to that.
Yes, we will soon, pretty
Yeah.
soon. Okay. So it should have been Lorelai. Chris brings Sherry to Rory's debate and back to Stars Hollow, where Sherry asks to be involved with Rory and only Rory. Lorelai brings Chris to Friday night dinner, but gets a chilly response from Emily, who's upset by the whole situation. It shouldn't have been you. Lorelai talks to Chris about finally being free for other options now that he's put his life back together. Late CB's plans exhaust Michelle. Those are like very, very quick synopses. I'm just like, I'm trying to even shorten my short synopsis.
Sorry, I was just actually chatting with you and then realized my mic was muted. I remember this episode pretty well, and you know, I mean, this was the big introduction of Sherry, which we had a lot of discussion and about that character and what her role in the series was. She was definitely introduced as nails on the chalkboard for sure. But I would say that, like, just from a story perspective, I wouldn't rate this one really high. I would probably put this one like just square in the middle, like just a good solid 3. Even though from like a memory standpoint, a lot more I still remember a lot of this. Like, I still feel like it's not stuff that like I really care all that much about.
Makes sense. Fair enough. Lost and found. Rory talks Lorelai to be nicer to Jess and gets him hired to clean the gutters. While with tea, Rory realizes she's lost her bracelet and searches everywhere. By the way, this bracelet was in like one of the other ones that I didn't read. Meanwhile, Luke's fed up with his living arrangements and starts shopping for a bigger place, which he finds overwhelming, so Lorelai helps. After discovering that the unit he wants is owned by Taylor, Luke buys his adjoining building to his diner, and it decides to expand. Jess returns the bracelet, and Lorelai confronts him about it.
This is one that has stayed with me. So I remember everything from this episode. I remember all of the interaction with Jess and Lorelai, all of the bracelet stuff, all of the stuff with Taylor and Luke. For whatever reason, it doesn't really like. What's up?
It's still fresh.
It is still fresh, but I just don't want to rate it like a 4 or 5, because for whatever reason, it's just like, it's not an episode that I'm like, oh, I just love this episode. It's just like, okay,
I mean, number 3 is I think it's okay. I think
it's okay.
It's okay.
Oh yeah, okay. I think it's okay. I think it's okay. I'm just saying it. I also just remember it really. I remember it very, 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 very well. So
Here's what I hope you remember. Here's the rub.
This is a towering episode. This is probably right next to Tisket and Tasket in terms of best episode of the season. This is so good. It's our first really strong Lorelai and Emily episode in terms of like their relationship. We get to see a side of it that we've just like never really seen before. They're the closest that they've ever been, right? Like the weird, like with Barney Miller, like hitting on Emily at the bar, drunk Barney Miller, and her dancing with him, and then feeling completely like she's betraying Richard, which I totally was feeling for her. Totally understand how she felt about that. It was a moment I was very annoyed with Lorelai. I thought that was really disrespectful that she would be doing that. That she would be pushing her mom like that. Like, I thought it was disrespectful to her own father that she would do that. Like, I really, really, really liked this episode.
Yeah, I agree. I'm curious to see how you're gonna react to the next one though in comparison. Then uncles and vegetables. Luke's uncle dies and Lorelai Luke tries to fulfill all its endless requests to his great chagrin. But the reenactors and his extended family don't care about Louis. Emily is planning her theater functions and gets involved in Sumi's wedding planning until it is unrecognizable to anyone else. Rory pushes Jess again and he silently helps organize a week.
This is one of the best endings of any episode. It's one of the funniest with the reenactors.
Yes, absolutely. But how
Just like the way.
would you say it's one of your favorites, or would you say it's?
I would probably rate this somewhere between 3 and a 4. You know, I thought it was really, I loved all that stuff. And it's probably closer to a 4. That all of that stuff where like Luke is like asking himself like, am I gonna be a Louis? Was really interesting because I actually think he could be a Louis, but what keeps him from ever becoming a Louis is Lorelai. Like Lorelai is like this factor, this aspect that Louis never had, and that's what will make him, because he's got a lot of the traits that everyone is kind of on, you know, kind of hard on Louis for apparently having, you know. So him like asking himself whether he's a Louis, that seems perceptive of him, you know, to do that. But that the reason that then in the end we realize that he's not a Louis because of Lorelai. Like Lorelai is this extra variable that Louis didn't have. And that's very important because that tells us so much about their relationship and that larger, broader series arc for those two characters. So that one's going to get a 4 from me.
Perfect. All right. Back in the saddle again. Richard Appleton. Rory asked Richard to help. I have all of the names listed as initials, so RR. It's confusing as to which one. Rory asks Richard to help with a school project, and he takes it super serious after initially turning it down. And this has the foreshadowing of Paris and older men. Michelle's amazing mother visits, and Lorelai realizes their relationship is based on her knowing nothing about her son. Elaine is horrified to find out that she has an aptitude for sales. Lorelai recommends them team back off of it and give Rory room, that they both come to admit that yes, Rory likes Jess.
Did you say that this was the Michelle episode?
Yeah, this is the Michelle episode.
This is where Ambiv.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. This is a pretty high up there episode for me in terms of remembering most of it. So I'd probably put this somewhere between a 3 and a 4 in terms of memory, in terms of the sort of burned in me. It gets closer to a 4 or maybe even above 4 if you just only are talking about the Michelle and his mother part of the storyline.
The Richard.
I wish that the series had. Yeah, the Richard part has like faded a little bit from me. Wait, refresh me on that one.
He joins the school project where they have to come.
Oh wait, no. That has. Of course that hasn't. That's actually really high. Okay, sorry, I didn't hear that first part.
Sorry.
I must have been focusing on my potato salad. this episode is super high. This is a 5.
Okay.
Because all of that stuff in the school project is all like really burned in hard, and his whole reaction to Headmaster Charleston. It was Headmaster Charleston.
Yes.
Gets into the huge altercation with, and gets really upset about it. You could kind of see all of that coming. By the way, you could feel that that there was a big reversal coming because everything was just going way too well for that whole project, and for Richard, and him feeling like he had purpose, and all of that stuff was really great. And yeah, you know what? And I also do remember the pretty strong Rory and Richard.
So Rory doesn't.
Or no, sorry. That it's not Rory. That Lorelai and Dean are out there, and Dean is like he likes her, doesn't he? And I'm sorry. I'm sorry about potato salad. I'm gonna just blame it all on the potato salad. Yeah, he says she likes him, and Lorelai doesn't answer.
Yeah.
And that's enough of an answer. And then he goes sulking away, which I felt really bad for him. I'm still at this point. I'm still feeling pretty strong with Dean, even though I can more annoyed with. But he does sulk away, and most people in post-show discussion are such a sulker. Look at him, and I'm like, the guy is crushed. I mean, he's absolutely crushed. Yes. Yeah, sorry. I was not focusing as well when you were telling me the description of this episode.
No worries.
But this is a high one. This is a 5. I wouldn't put it at I wouldn't put it in the same category as Tisket a Tasket and There's the Rub, but in terms of just how well the episode has sat with me since that season, it's a 5.
Teach me tonight. Luke asks Rory to help tutor Jess so he doesn't have to repeat the school year. And there's something in there about how he stole all baseballs from the school. Lorelai doesn't like it, but gets overruled. Jess drives Rory's car and crashes it where Rory gets a broken wrist. Lorelai freaks out at Luke, who goes to find Jess and gets him on a bus out of town. Meanwhile, Lorelai gets to pick the movie night and picks The Yearling and the debut of Film by Kirk.
I mean, awesome episode. Definitely one of the best episodes of the season and the series. Just really good. It's an episode that you can come back to. We've come back to it recently, discussing whether Rory's got it or not. Right? This is an episode where we have our first hint of well, is Rory really the golden child that we've been told? Because we have Jess kind of scoffing at the idea that she could be this world. The tension of the other guy driving the car gift that was given by the other guy, the tension that they build there, you can see that they're gonna have to do something. I could just feel it, oh, something's gonna happen here, was just that was just brilliant writing. Just giving you that just Hitchcock style suspense. What else?
The Luke and Lorelai.
Oh, the Luke and Lorelai explosion there. When she's chasing him, she's not chasing him, following him in a clipped pace, we'll say, behind him, and she's yelling, and it ends with right back at you. Just awesome. One of the strongest moments, just in terms of narrative impact. It's the beginning of the big freeze out between those two characters. This is a strong one. This one is burned.
I would imagine between the fight, the car, and then the film by Kirk, there's there's just no
and then
way.
filmed by Kirk is just, and then that ending, you know, where we find out through Miss Patty and Babette, like with Rory overhearing what happened to Jess. It's just all of it is just fantastic. While this like ridiculous, you know, this ridiculous film is playing for the time. It's like a perfect blend of all of the aspects of the show. Character development, and heartbreak, and it's great.
All right, help wanted. Dean comes back to town to find out about the accident. Richard needs help from his office, and Lorelai fills in until she realizes Richard won't move on without her. The music store is opening and stars follow, which causes great excitement for Lane, and it's love at first sight with the drum set. Rory's upset that everyone blames Jess for the accident, including Emily and Lorelai, which leads to a blow up. And this is the episode where we meet Sophie.
This one stuck with me. This one's pretty. I mean, obviously, it was the episode. I didn't know that the band storyline was actually they planted it at the end of season 2. I didn't know that. I thought that was just like a complete storyline developed by the writers in this, you know, in the hiatus between seasons 2 and 3. So that was so exciting for me to see. And I actually mentioned, I remember that like if I didn't know anything to come, right? Obviously, I'm a part of the storyline of the planning there. That I actually was expecting that the Sophie character was going to play a sort of guru style character to Lane, and that season 3 would be about like the rise of a drummer with this like almost like, you know, like a Mr. Miyagi style, you know, grouchy musician who doesn't want to teach her, but like, you know, she keeps pressing and finally Sophie breaks down and teaches her how to play the drums. That would have been a very fun storyline, but I'm glad that they went with the one they decided to go with.
I think they could have combined it for like a few episodes and then gone with that.
Yeah, really strong. I mean, sorry, remind me the first part of the summary.
Dean comes back to town to find out about the accident.
Oh right, yeah.
And Richard needs Lorelai.
Oh right, the Richard needs Lorelai in the office is also so great. That's so great because you sort of like you can see where that's going. You can see that. Well, Lorelai's just very, very good at all of the stuff that she's doing because that's the job she does, right? Like that's what she does at the end, and so she's good at it. But you can just see that he's interpreting it differently. He's interpreting it as like, you know, you're like we should be doing this together, and you just can see like at a certain point in the episode how that's going to end, how sad Richard's going to be and hurt and all of that. So it's just another real signal. Great episode. That's high up for me. I'm going to put that somewhere between the 4 and 5.
Okay. Lorelai's graduation day.
That's a pretty good episode, and it stuck with me. Everything from the indie film guy that they, you know, the film guy that they hired to shoot it, to, you know, to her parents coming and them being quite like actually very emotional at her graduating, and then of course like the hardest part of the whole episode, which is that where you go and
why Rory didn't go.
And why Rory didn't go, and her going to New York. Again, that's like it's, you know, like we get to venture off into our New York side of the Gilmore Girls story, which is always kind of fun. And then coming back and like being just completely apologetic and
Well, but some of us were saying, or I believe you were saying.
I was saying she's being apologetic, whether she's feeling apologetic apologetics is a completely different thing. But just ending with like, no, this was horrible. I should never have done this. You know, all that stuff. It was like, wow, you really aren't giving Lorelai even an inch to get to say, or you've completely robbed Lorelai of any feelings on that, because you just like kind of hedge, like you said, sort of hedge the whole situation in your favor. Just great episode, and yeah, high up there, somewhere between a 4 and a 5.
Okay, and then our finale, I just can't get started. So, there is a president class election at school, which sees Paris reaching out to Rory to run as her VP. Chris comes into town for the cast removal and sticks around.
Yeah.
Suki's wedding day comes up, and Suki freaks out a bit the night before, but Lorelai calms her down. Jess wants to come back, and Luke plays down the law. And everyone is excited about Lorelai and Chris being together until he tells her that Cherry is pregnant. Meanwhile, Rory kisses Jess.
Yep. This was my opinion was a way better finale than our first finale. This one I remember feeling like, wow, if I was watching this for the first time and I had to wait an entire year for the next one, that would because there's so much there, right? This one's definitely a 5 for sure. Every bit of it is burned in. And it's just awesome. It's got so much in it. We had lots of discussion about whether or not what Chris did was right. Like, going from like telling Rory, I'm here for you, I'm committed, I'm 100%, I'm all in. Basically,
Let's not steal Luke's words.
Yeah, I want to steal his thunder. But yeah, I mean, he basically from one scene to another it goes from like, yeah, I'm 100%, I'm not gonna let you guys down, to I'm out of here. But we had a big discussion about whether or not something as big as you just found out that you are going to be a father warrants that, whether he gets any pass there for that, or at the very least should get stuck around to at least tell Rory that. Explain that to Rory. It definitely makes for a huge bomb of finale, and then of course the kiss. That's really rough. I mean, it's not really rough, but I mean, it's like the whole thing is just really like full of emotional, it's just like emotionally charged.
All right, so season 2, what would be your favorite episode?
It's either It's Just Gonna Task It or There's the Rub. I think I'm gonna go with It's Just Gonna Task It.
Nice, okay. And what about Rory's storyline or arc this season? How do you feel?
I'm still pretty into Rory this season. The stuff with Jess and Dean and all of that, at this point it's starting to erode my feelings about her. But she's still high up there for me. She's still high up there for me. Now, by the way, I'm still a huge Emily fan. Like, that I should be clear on that. But like when we're talking about like the the main characters of the show, like I'm thinking like, is this a Lorelai show or is this a Rory show? And I think at this point I'm still sort of feeling that it's largely a Rory show. At least that's how I'm feeling, in terms of who I'm most invested in. But I'm starting. It's starting to erode for me here with Rory, and I'm starting to become a little bit more invested in it.
Okay, we're moving on to season 3. I'm gonna try and do this a little bit faster.
Yeah.
I don't want to keep everybody here till 2 a.m. Okay, so I'm gonna say the title and like give half of the description. If you're good with that, we'll go on with it.
Great.
All right. Lazy, pacey, crazy days. Freaky dream. Rory is still in Washington D.C. and writes to Jess. Can't think of what to write to Jess. Paris gets a date from Jamie. About a Friday night dinner to be with CT, but Rory is unhappy with what Jess is up to. Lorelai has to tell Richard and Emily about Christopher and Sherry.
I'm gonna give this one.
You're on its fan? No.
Yeah, I mean, just for the sake of just like moving forward, I think it's just I remember large parts of it, but like I wouldn't say that it's perfect.
Haunted Land. Back to Chilton for Rory and her new role as Class VP. Francine has a new role as Senior Vice President and quickly reminds Rory to play nice and to try and get Paris to do the same. Emily sets up a lunch with Lorelai to get her to find a plan to get Christopher back. Lorelai rebuffs her, and Christopher crashes her night dinner for a big blow-up. Rory yells at him about her disappointment. Kirk asks Lorelai out, and Jess confronts Rory about Dean and Shane.
This one will probably be also around a 3.
You're not ready. Beginning of the season, John. Application anxiety. Applications arrive and Rory is nervous. The Q&A that Paris organized is little to a silly for concern.
Really quickly, I may just go back to that last episode. Was that the Deep Throat episode?
Yes. No.
Or is that coming? Is that coming?
It's coming.
Okay.
That's coming. Yeah. Even Emily gets in on the anxiety over competition, so Lorelai sets up a meeting with the Harvard alumnus and his family, where there's still a black sheep. Lane puts up an ad looking for a band and meets a Dave who sings for him. Taylor pesters Luke about an old-fashioned soda shop going through the town hall meetings and is finally convinced. Dean tries to broach the subject of their future after Rory goes to Harvard but doesn't go well.
I know it sounds lame. I mean, I remember large portions of this, but I still haven't gotten to a place where I'm like, oh my gosh, yes. So
but John, you were supposed to be in this episode. This is the guy you were supposed to play.
Yeah, I know. That's why I don't like it. No, no, it's not that I don't like it. I just it's just I'd say it's sort of just a 3 for me.
All right.
But yes, I was supposed to play that guy. Well, I wasn't supposed to play that guy. But yeah, I was supposed to play that guy. I didn't get the role because clearly I wasn't right for it.
Well, I mean, you were right for a better role, but I'm just saying
right for
you were involved already before it started shooting.
Yeah.
And it's funny because you literally come in the next episode. Like,
yeah, I know. I remember that. That's why I remember thinking like, oh wow, so they must have auditioned me for that. I didn't get it, but then I must have left a strong enough impression that they just in the next episode. Although it's very possible that they were even like, he's not right for this, but let's bring him back for that next one, which we already know is going to be. We're already going to be auditioning for that because if it was the episode right after, then they would have already known about like storyline casting director, they would have already told the casting director to get started looking at these. And so it's very possible that even like I might have walked out the room and maybe Dan was like, he's not right for this. And maybe Mara or Jamie right there in the room were like, hey, but what about for our next episode, that other character, you know? That could have happened.
Absolutely.
But anyway, still a 3.
Okay. One's gone class and the other one dies.
Oh, I'm listening.
Yeah.
I mean, I have to like this episode. This is a good episode, but yeah, it's but go reread just the little snippets.
Lorelai gets asked to speak to high schoolers about an entrepreneur, but it goes off plan as the talk revolves around Rory's conception and effect on her life. She's confronted by others on the street where she defends herself. Lee tries to practice quietly with the band, but it's not working out. So Lee rebels by dyeing her hair and then dyeing it back. Luke speaks to Jess about how to treat women, even someone like Shane, and Jess gets rude about how Luke waits around for Lorelai.
I remember large parts of this episode. I wouldn't say it's like one that I hold on to or think about much. I definitely remember that you know, about Shane in the closet. About him putting Shane in the closet. It's like, what? You do not put women in the closet.
She went in there.
I know. But that was sort of the whole thing.
No, I know.
His side, he's like, what? You went in there? Oh, it's like, oh, come on. Yeah. These were a lot of things that really really bugged me about the Jess character early on in the series, and I had a hard time letting go of it. Yeah, but you know, I mean, like, it's the introduction of the band, so I have to be really happy that this episode exists. But you know, for me, this episode, you know, it like the part of it that I remember most was the part that I was in. All of the rest of it, it's like one of those things that, like, if you remind me, I'll think about it, but it doesn't really land. It's like a quintessential episode. It's not like when I think of Gilmore Girls. Like when I think of Gilmore Girls, I think of episodes like It's As Good as That's Good, or I think of episodes like that. So this one, I'd still say around a 3. Season 3 gets a lot of 3s.
Yeah.
Also, you know, I will say about this season in general, this was like to me, it was like I mentioned like the Colossus season, you know, like before that, the things like the way that it looked, everything looked a little grittier, and then season 3 felt like production value has really gone up, you know, but in a way that like felt a little too polished. That changes for season 4. Season 4, like, suddenly it gets really, just from like a stylistic perspective, that's where like the it gets like exactly where I liked it. But this season in general, I just felt like just everything was a little too glossy for me. Just from production standpoint.
Yeah. So 8 o'clock in the Oasis.
A funny episode. That Justin Tanner wrote that episode. That I remember, and just because it's such a wacky episode, and he's a very wacky writer, so it's like a makes perfect sense that he would have been the writer. Yeah, like just great. I mean, I remember all of it. Weirdo comes over, asks if she can, you know, if she could check in while he's away, and was it feed his fish, like
water his plants,
or water his plants and do all of that kind of stuff, and his lawn, right? Okay, so that's also the episode with awesome moment where the sprinklers won't turn off.
Yeah.
And Jess comes over, turns it off, and then the two of them are standing there like soaked, and then he like something like oh right, because she called Dean. She's sort of like, Dean's gonna come, he turns them back on. So that Dean can deal with that moment. That was a good moment for Jess. If I think back on it now, like in hindsight, that's a moment that I like Jess, even at a time where I was like kind of dying. This is a good one. This suddenly we got to jump up. I'm gonna put this one at like somewhere between a 4 and a 5, maybe close to 5, but somewhere between a 4 and a 5.
Okay. So then that brings us to our next one. Take the deviled eggs. Rory's invited to Sherry's baby shower, and Lorelai gets roped into going too, where she discovers Sherry's plans for a Chi-Chi and her planned C-sections, as well as Green is the New Pink. Jess buys a used car, which gets deviled egged, and Luke discovers that Jess has been working at a Walmart. This is also the episode with the protest request by the town owner.
Good episode. I'm gonna put that one as a solid 4 right now. I remember most of it. Really loved most of it. That town loner moment is like historic and awesome. Scoozle foos or whatever. I don't know. Anyway.
I'm sure people in the audience are like screaming it, and I apologize.
Yeah. Oh, and I'm sure that in a second here, I'm going to get it as a message on my back channel messages here. Somebody's going to type it in. That's a solid 4. Really strong episode. Love the deviled eggs. You know, and Jess, you know, realizing that somebody deviled egged his car. Of course, it was Lorelai and Rory. And then the baby shower, awesome, weird. Sherry wanting Lorelai to come in, remember? He's like at the car, at the car door, like, oh, come on, Lorelai, which was like kind of passive aggressive, I guess, but I was just at the time I also sort of felt like, come on, she wants to have a connection. I don't know. Anyway, guess what? I've got some messages in my inbox. Let's see if anybody got it. Yeah, let's see here. Stop the noodle scoos. Noodle scoos. Yeah, there we go. Noodle scoos.
All right, the next one, I hope you remember.
Yeah.
They shoot Gilmore's, don't they? So we have, it's the all-night dance marathon. Yeah. I think that's enough.
Yeah, that's an episode. I mean, I didn't get the title, but like that's an episode that's a 5 because that one is an episode that I probably like. If you ask me to like run through every episode of the series, like I'll definitely stop. I remember including like the big moment, like you got Shane and Jess, like sitting there watching for some odd reason.
That's live.
That they wanted
Bluetooth mode.
Harass.
Connected.
Those two should be interested in the dance marathon. And then of course, like that big moment there between Rory and Dean, where he just like in front of everybody breaks up with her, but rightfully so, in my opinion. I mean, the guy had been like at that point just like he'd just been dragged through the mud, and it felt like the right time for him to break off. Yeah, the dance marathon's awesome. Like I remember everything. Like I remember all of it. Kirk's hilarious little like dance like across the camera, and his big victory lap. This one's a 5, straight 5.
Cool, I'm happy to hear that because I do adore this one. All right, next we get Let the Games Begin. Recovering from the marathon includes Lorelai accepting that Rory and Jess are together while they are still getting used to being together. Richard asks Rory to let him show her around Yale for his remembrance meeting, something like that. We learn about Richard and Emily's history and their proposal, and we hear of Penelon Lot for the first time. Lorelai's almost money. But Richard also arranges a clandestine meeting for Rory with Dean, upsetting everyone. And Rory goes to apologize to Dean about how she treated him.
This one's probably a 4 for me. I loved of course, the entry into the Yale world and all of that. I loved some of that backstory where we're kind of like going into the history of Richard and Emily and learning that there's some other characters there that may now kind of we might be getting a taste of those characters to come. This one's good. This one's probably a 4 for me.
Okay. A deep fried Korean Thanksgiving. Lorelai and Rory make the rounds.
I'll say that this one's a 4 right out. Right, just like I remember most of it. I thought it was really good. I wouldn't say that I thought it was great. I remember when I saw the title of it, I thought that it was going to be on par with like how I felt about Korean New Year's, or some of the other big episodes. But it didn't end up. I didn't end up feeling like it was like a just knock it out of the park, awesome one. Just personally for me. I know that it's a big fan favorite, but I would give it a 4, but I wouldn't go as far to say as a 5. Of course, I remember the deep frying of the turkey. That's really funny. Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, That'll Do, Pig. Trix comes back into town and declares that she wants to move back, and Lorelai gives Emily advice on how to deal with her. Francine stages a coup-like move behind Paris's back, and Rory's in for the fight against her. The town has a carnival which Jess does not want to attend until he realizes Dean wants to go, so a tense night ensues where they're all together. Dean admits that he plans to be friends with Rory, with whom he has already shared pie.
This is the episode where Dean's little sister is there, and she's like, "Hey, Rory," but she looks like she's about like 17 years old.
Yes.
Yeah, good episode. I would say somewhere between a 3 and a 4. I remember all of it, but it doesn't really like. The probably the scene that I remember the most is the scene in the alley between Jess and Dean. Is it?
Yes.
Where Dean like kind of antagonizes Jess a bit.
Yes, and basically tells him like, it worked for you to be friends with her, so.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and yeah. It's a good episode. I would say like somewhere between a 3 and a 4.
Perfect. I solemnly swear. Emily is sued by a maid and does not appreciate Lorelai's testimony on her behalf. Francine convinces Paris Rory is not to be trusted after Rory confirms that Paris has a boyfriend. Paris turns on Rory via fencing match. Suki meets an old colleague and mistakenly agrees to a date which she feels guilty about. His business partner, Alex, asks Lorelai out.
This is the Alex episode. This is also the Deep Throat episode, right? This is the yeah. I'm gonna give this one a 4. I like this episode. I was really hoping that Alex would sort of develop into something more. I really, of course, I really loved seeing my friend Joe Fria in the episode, and loved that whole storyline with Suki, and just in general, I thought solid.
Okay. Lorelai out of water. Lorelai is going fishing with Alex, so Luke builds her a pond to practice on. Paris and Rory fight. The Paris and Rory fight reaches the headmaster, who tries to intervene. Construction on Taylor's shop starts, and Luke meets an interesting lawyer, Nicole. Lane and Rory prep for a cousin's wedding, which Dave plays at again. Lane and Lorelai and Rory clean out the garage for the band to practice.
Another good one, I'd put somewhere between a 3 and a 4. Remember most of it, but I wouldn't say that it like is one that I immediately go to when I think of the show.
I feel like I can guess what you're going to say on the next one. Dear Emily and Richard. Sherry goes into labor and no one can be there but Rory. Lorelai remembers the event of Rory's birth,
This is a good
discovering the
episode.
pregnancy, sharing the news. Yeah, you were saying something.
No, continue.
Sharing the news, the delivery, and leaving the Gilmore house. Dean starts working construction for Taylor, and the inn is throwing a retirement party that keeps changing themes, while Luke takes Nicole out on a date.
I mean, wait a second. Maybe I'm getting this one wrong.
This is the one that kept going back and forth in time, and you were
Right,
saying like it
yes,
felt off
okay.
to you that you
Yes.
couldn't really tell what was happening.
Yeah, this one, it's kind of interesting because I didn't really like that episode. I mean, I mentioned it there. I was sort of like, I wasn't a fan of, even though it seems like it's one that I should like, because it was like kind of a big world building episode where we kind of go into the past and we get to see characters from a different time and all that. For whatever reason, it just stylistically, it fell off from the rest of the show. And although I do think about that episode a lot, even in these like, you know, these most recent seasons, I still think about it a lot. So I guess it has sort of stuck with me. I still don't know if I'd ever really like want to just pop that one up again and watch, or that if it came on, I would be really excited for it. Certainly not the way that like I would be excited for like Cinnamon's Wake or Tisket a Tasket or There's the Rub.
So
So
are we declaring our first two? For season
Yeah,
two?
why don't we do a 2 there?
Yeah. All right. So Swan Song. Lorelai goes to New York with Alex, Suki, and Jackson and experiences the worst show. Rory takes Jess to Friday night dinner, and he won't explain where his black eye is from, even though Jess is aware that Rory and Dean were held by Patty for her show and was not happy to hear about it. Jess eventually admits to Luke that it was a swan, which
I know this episode. I'll say that I'm gonna give this episode also somewhere like around a 2 or a 3.
Okay. There's a whole
not
band storyline. Do you remember
what's
that?
up?
There's a whole band
Yeah.
storyline here.
Yeah.
Okay.
I do remember that.
Okay.
This is them moving into the garage, right?
Yeah, and being oblivious to the
And-
fact that Lane and Dave are dating.
Right, exactly. Yeah. My problem with this episode is I just was not a huge fan of the whole like swan
Yes.
thing, you know, all of that, like that kind of it's still like, thinking back on it, doesn't really make a whole lot of sense.
Except
And
if
then-
you've experienced swans in real life.
Yeah, no,
they're
I know
actually
swans
mean.
are, no, I know that swans are actually legit mean.
Yeah.
I just like it wasn't sure I could be really buy that this guy is like that embarrassed about being like swanned,
Yeah.
you know, and then at the end, like, you know, they're there, like, what are they gonna do? Like, are they there to kill a swan? Like why are they there at the very end? And if it's to kill a swan, I'm not really crazy about that.
I think it was to show him where the attack happened, but not necessarily like kill.
Really? Why?
But-
Why would you do that? Why would you go back to the place where you were attacked? Like to show, I mean, what, and how would you prove that if there was a swan going around? Like, is it that the swan is going to also try and attack you again? But aren't swans mean? Don't they always do that? It just,
Yeah, but now they'll attack Luke, so then Luke will believe him.
yeah, but I mean, Luke should believe that swans attack anybody because swans are mean, right? But then also it's like, why would you do that? Why would you want to hurt your friend or hurt your uncle? Like, just, I mean, I don't know. It just like that whole storyline was like kind of, and it feeds into the whole feeling of like, I just was not really all that into Jess at this point.
Fair enough. Face Off, the hockey game.
Good episode.
Yeah, you remember it.
Really good episode. Yeah.
All right. So what would we say? 4, 5?
I'm gonna give that a 4. I'm gonna give that a 4 for sure.
Okay.
I remember
Um,
lots of little moments from that. Remember all of the Lindsay stuff from it, and Dean waving, and yeah, I mean, just good episode.
The big one. Rory and Lorelai are waiting for college responses, but Kirk mixes up everyone's mail. Rory and Paris are picked to present the bicentennial anniversary speech that's televised on C-SPAN. Paris sleeps with Jamie for the first time and needs Rory to analyze how she feels about it. At the speech, she discovers that she did not get accepted into Harvard and completely loses it.
And,
Suki's
and
cooking.
Rory at the very end gets like all these envelopes.
Yeah.
This episode, I have mixed feelings on it. You know, I think it has one of the best acting performances in the entire series from Liza Weil in that, like, that when she's like breaking down
Yeah.
about not getting into Harvard and like and like sleeping with Jamie and all that, just like, and then also just Rory there with her like comforting friend. Just, it's just like Rory at her absolute best. Awesome. But I think that I was there was something about the, like, you know, mailbox full of every acceptance letter in existence that felt a little, that I wasn't crazy about it.
The golden
reason.
child is too golden.
It was a little too golden for me,
Yeah.
for my taste. And then there was, like, you know, I heard somebody or read somewhere, you know, the folks were like, why didn't she get a scholarship? I'm like, a scholarship? You want her to get a scholarship on top of getting into every single school? Like, oh my goodness, this is like, there's a complete fantasy now.
Yeah. There's also maths in this episode, so I don't know if that also colors your...
Yes. Yes.
This is where they bump into each
This
other
is where
and share a kiss.
This is where they bump into each other.
Yeah.
Wait, and they share a kiss?
They share a kiss at the Coates after the entire talk.
That's what I thought. That's right. That's right. It was at the Coates.
Yeah.
This is not yet where Lorelai walks in and he's like backing away, like no. Okay, that's
so.
coming,
This
that's
is
coming,
this is the setting up for to eventually get.
Yeah, exactly right. That I remember. So when we get there, I'll be like, oh, I remember that.
So would you say this was a 3 or a 4?
I'd say it's somewhere between a 3 and a 4.
Okay.
But you know what? I'm gonna give it a 4 because the performance by Liza is just too good. Is just too good to be true.
A Tale of Pose and Fire. The Edgar Allan Poe Society meets at the inn, which catches fire, and the guests have to spread out all over town, leaving Lorelai homeless. Rory and Lorelai create a pro-con list for all the accepted college, and Yale's pros beat the rest. Jess gets Employee of the Month, and Luke suspects he's working more than he claims. Luke feels
this is a 4.
From...
I'll just say this is a 4. I really like this episode a lot and remember it, and it's still with me. Still remember the lady the woman hanging out of the window next to Luke's, right? No, or was that in a different episode?
Yeah, that's the one, because she's yelling at Luke to come down.
She's yelling, like, yeah. Right, exactly. And I'm thinking to myself, why not go ask her if you can stay at her place?
I don't know her.
Right.
I don't want to stay with a cranky old woman.
Right. No, really good, just really good. And then of course, like, this is so obviously the setup for you know, we're getting much closer to getting to you know, the Dragonfly and everything that's been set up in the last 2 seasons. Going through this the way that we're doing, it's like, it's really cool because I can actually now kind of take a step back, and from a bird's eye perspective, I can now see how they were setting up all of this stuff in previous seasons.
It's amazing when I was going through this, how much happens in like each episode. It's hard to like find the big arches in the episode because so much happens sometimes.
Totally.
Happy birthday, baby. Rory wants to throw a Lorelai party with the biggest pizza, but can't beat the record. Kirk unfortunately gets burned. Richard gives Lorelai money he invested at her birth, and Lorelai upsets Emily by paying back her Chilton dues. Lorelai, Suki, and Michelle try to figure out how to deal with the fire. Michelle is suspicious of Toby, the night manager. Luke confirms that Jess is skipping school and steals his car. Paris has a severe reaction to a nose piercing, and Luke meets Nicole's parents.
3.
Wow.
I mean, not that I don't remember any of that stuff.
No,
I do.
but
I do.
no,
It just-
this
it
is what I
doesn't-
want from you. This is
It just
your
doesn't
reaction.
really stick
Yeah.
with me. That
Keg Max.
Ugh. Love this
Yay.
episode. This is a 5.
Yay! Yay!
This is another one of those episodes. Just like it gives you so much in so little time. So many things happen. Everything
Yeah.
from the weird bedroom scene with Jess and the fight. With the band playing, and it's really good.
So this is the one that you were talking about with Max, where he's like backing out of the
Yep.
room and is like, leave me alone.
Yep.
So this is the other one.
Yep. And then that to me felt like the official conclusion to all of that. And it really felt like the same, like with Tristan, it felt like we're not going to see this character anymore.
Yeah. Say goodnight, Gracie. Luke and Lorelai deal with the fight aftermath, and Lane is not sure of the repercussions of her drunken confession, but Dave petitions to take Lane to the prom and is confused by an obscure quote from Mrs. Kim, which a lot of people quoted in the last 24 hours, John. 36 hours.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Fran passes away. And sorry, I wrote Rory, but it should be Lorelai and Suki try to figure out who owns the inn now. Jess and Rory struggle to communicate. Jess meets a quiet customer who turns out to be his long gone father. Dean announces he's getting married and doesn't get the expected reaction from Rory. Jess takes off after his father.
Oof. This is somewhere between a 3 and a 4. I'd probably give it close to a 4. Definitely all of that is pretty, that's pretty solid. I haven't forgotten any of that. I still remember all of those moments pretty well. Maybe closer to a 4. I wasn't really, the one thing that I didn't really love was I didn't really love the whole Jess father dynamic. Like there was something awkward about how all of that sort of played out. Kind of felt like it came out of nowhere. But I loved all of the Dave stuff. Loved it. Loved the Mrs. Kim just joking around, messing with them. That was a pretty solid storyline. And I really feel like that was the storyline where I kind of was like, oh, you know what? I know that I'm losing this character after this season, but it's a shame because I really like him.
All right, that brings us to Here Comes the Sun. Jess goes off to find his dad, and everyone tries to keep it from Rory as she preps for her exams and for the big Europe trip. Lorelai finds out that Yale money is needed because she does not qualify for assistance. Miss Celine helps Emily and Richard get dressed for graduation, and Emily goes out of her way to keep Lorelai from having dinner. Rory is the valedictorian. So this was the episode, I don't know if you remember, where like Emily's like, we have plans. Even if you wanted to stay for dinner, we can't stay. And she's like, oh, so if Rory wanted to stay, she couldn't stay either. No, we have plans. And then Lorelai turns to Richard and goes, guess what, Dad? Rory's staying for dinner. And he's like, excellent. She's like, good luck with that Academy Award, Mom.
This one is low for me in terms of it staying with me.
All right, so 2, 1.
I'm gonna say a 1 or a 2, actually.
Okay. All right, 1. And then our finale, Those Are Strings, Pinocchio. Rory graduates. The inn is slow, and Mia, the person who's not to be named, decides to close it down. Rory gets a car as a present and makes up with Dean, offering to buy him a present. Rory makes a deal with Rory and Emily to pay for Yale, which allows Lorelai to then buy the inn. Luke is going to go on a cruise with Nicole, and Jess calls in, at which point Rory says, I think I may have loved you, but that's done now.
Was the last episode the one that was like the pilot? By the way, the one before this, was that the pilot for
Yes.
Windward Circle? Yeah, that's
Yes.
the reason why that one's that one actually that part of the episode is pretty burned into me in terms of like remembering it. But and I like that they actually went outside of Stars Hollow like that far, just because I like that kind of worldy type stuff. But ultimately it was still like a part, it was a part of the show that it just wasn't really, I just didn't really care as much for it. I mean, I guess because of the Jess. So just going back just to make sure, because it's
I said it very briefly. I just said Jess goes to find his father, and I didn't delve into that part.
I know, and I know you were like, I didn't want to even deal with that. It's the one you were like, that's the one I like the least in the series. I even remember you being like, I never watched this one again. But I like that world building stuff. So I actually appreciated that part of it, but I just didn't really find the narrative of it all that
Would you like to bump it up to a 2 from a 1?
Let's bump it from a 1 to a 2.
Yeah. Okay.
The final episode, the finale, was the graduation.
Yes. And there was that.
This is gonna be like an unpopular opinion, but like, because I know people love that graduation. I liked it. I didn't love it. I sort of was like, I don't know what it is. Maybe because I don't like my own graduations were not particularly emotionally like that wasn't a big thing for me. So maybe I couldn't really like get excited in that same way. But the season finale for season 2 was definitely stronger for me than the season finale of season 3. What remind me again the cliffhanger for this one, or did it even have a cliffhanger?
It didn't really.
It was more
the one was the dream.
It was the dream. It was Luke's dream. Luke's dream was kind of the most interesting part about the end of that set of that.
And
that
then
season.
Just knowing that like Lorelai will now get to start her in, like that's still like an open-ended type of thing.
Exactly. Yeah. It's interesting, but now going through these last 3 seasons, it's so clear to me that like season 3 is my least favorite season.
Absolutely. I was gonna say
those 3. It's so interesting, but like even the finale, I'm like it's like, it's nice, it's sweet, like, but it would like, there was also a part of me, I think I remember feeling kind of like a little sad that we were going to be losing Chilton. And that meant that I was going to be losing a bunch of characters that I already really liked. I really liked Madeline. I really liked Louise, and I kind of knew that means that they're gone now. So I think that there was a little bit of like a little bit of a sadness leaving season 3, because I knew we were moving into another area, and that I was kind of itching to get into season 4 so that I could like experience the whole Yale thing and just get into that whole new world.
We better get Yale this episode.
Oh yeah. But it's interesting. It's like that season 3 for me, when I'm thinking back on it, it wasn't a season that I like have a ton of really like oh my god in that episode, oh man in that episode. I was like, yeah, I remember that episode, I remember everything in it, but
I feel like the only one that you reacted to really strongly was Keg Max.
Yes.
As soon as I said Keg Max, you're like, oh yeah. But I can't even I know that you have another 5 somewhere, but I'm trying to. The other 5 is they shoot Gilmore's. Yeah. the dance marathon.
Yeah, that was an awesome one. If I were to say my favorite episode of season 3, it would be Keg Max. More so even than the dance marathon, although it's still pretty high up there. Like it's pretty close. And also I really loved the hockey.
Face off.
The face off as well. But it's funny. It's like, I mean, this was where my character was introduced. It's where the band. It's all of that stuff. And still, even from that perspective, I'm like, yeah, but the band isn't really the band yet. Like the band doesn't become the band until season 4.
Yeah.
And season 4, I know is where things like go into like overdrive, like where really like things start to get amazing. It just in terms of my connection to the series.
Okay, but
that's
John, you didn't actually give me a rating for this finale. Like, would you say it's a 2?
Oh, for the finale?
Yeah.
It's somewhere between a 2 and a 3. Maybe no, I'm gonna be honest with myself and I'm gonna say like I'm not like it wasn't a finale that I loved. I would say like it's a 2. I could be wrong. It's possible that the recordings say have it different, and in the moment I really loved it. But like thinking back to it now,
this is reflection. Yeah.
Yeah, thinking back to it now, like the phone call to Jess, and the Prius that we weren't really sure was a Prius, except everyone was sure it was a Prius except for me. I don't know. It was like, like probably around 2 for me.
Interesting. So I think that we can clearly say season 3 was not your favorite, but of 1 or 2, which would you say you favored more?
Between 1 or 2, I'd probably say it was season 2 that I liked.
I was gonna say I can give you the numbers if you want based on like how you rated them, but yeah, I think you're right.
It was 2, right?
It was 2, yeah. 2 definitely had a lot more 5s.
Yeah, I mean, 2 had a Tisket a Tasket, and it had There's the Rub, both of which, and it had some other it just had a bunch of other like really like big powerhouse episodes. I mean, I feel like there weren't like season 3 didn't have as many of those, just absolutely awesome. This is like just a big like festival of living art, greatest American hero. When I think of the series, I think of big stuff like that. And I feel like season 3 didn't have a lot of that.
For me, it's that middle, like Face Off, the big one, A Tale of Hose and Fire, and then like Keg Max, like those middle episodes in the middle of the season, those would be the highest ranking for me. But they're also the most, I think, in my opinion, they're the most like fireworksy. Like there's a lot of fireworks. There's a lot of like drama.
Well, I like the drama. I love the drama. I love the drama. I remember everyone was really like emotional about that finale. Like I get it. It's like a really emotional, but it's like, I don't know. I'm not really one who just enjoys like a sweet sentimental moment. And that just felt like it was a lot of sentimentality rather than really just juicy drama.
Right.
And so I gravitate towards those type of episodes. Those are the ones that really like that I just remember the most.
So John, I don't know how much longer we have you, but if you're open to it, I'd like to open the floor and let people come up and have
sure.
questions.
I can stick around for another half hour.
Perfect. So I'm going to go ahead. Anyone who would like to come up and ask John a question, obviously, please mute yourself when you first come up, and then we'll go through. Thank you all for your patience. And is that it?
Wow. So folks really still have not gotten this thing, huh?
I was gonna say
No,
this
we
is
really have
dangerous for you
not.
to let people talk.
Okay, John, you might want to run.
Mighty
Uh-oh.
bold of you to let us up here.
Don't worry, I'm not gonna like throw any eggs at you or anything.
Either of mine, so you're good, John.
Do you guys at least have you at least gotten all 10 of the originals?
No, I've
we've
only
only gotten
7
or 8
We
clues.
said 8 of the first 10.
Really,
have
only
this-
8?
I've only
Yeah,
seen
only
8 of
8.
the first 10.
That's funny.
No, it's
It's not funny.
I literally got
Hey,
sick
Fran.
at work today and had to stop moving because I was not trying to figure this.
It has been good fun though. I will say I'm not usually into this style of game when it comes to things like this, but it has been more fun than I thought it would be to try and sort it out. And I feel completely clueless, but I feel like I know half of it at the same time, and I just can't figure out the last part.
Yeah, I
I'm just
know it
gonna
has
go
to
to
do
sleep
with
and
the song, and it's driving me crazy.
And we've all tried a million things, forwards, backwards, in emoji form, in capital, not capital, punctuation, no punctuation. Ah,
can we
My
play hot
goodness.
cold now, John? Hot cold?
Oh
No.
my goodness.
No, I do feel bad. I do feel bad because, like, you know, if you guys do crack this before those folks, you know, discover that they've got a clue in their inbox, I'm sure when they do, they'll be kind of like, oh, I'm so sorry.
can we play, hey, give us the answer?
No. What I will say though, what I will say is, if you think that the answer might be, if you think that I may have placed the answer or parts of the answer in any places, anywhere, in multiple places, right? If you think that I've placed the different parts of that password in multiple places, you may want to compare each to see if there are similarities.
Is it just those 2 episodes though?
We've been
Or
doing
is there another one back in season 1, 2, or 3? I mean, I saw the one in season 5, Written in the Stars, and I saw your thing in the I get a sidekick out of you, but did you have another one?
I'm not telling you that, but I will say that.
Hey.
But I will say that that's at least 2. So I mean, you got something with just those 2.
The Remarcus app was running kind of slow, so I gave up on trying to go further back because it was just taking too long to load each time. And I
But you
thought it was
but you
maybe
could
because a lot of
probably
people were in there.
but you could probably use 2, even if there were more than 2. You could probably use 2 for comparison.
every time I've harvested today and saw new kernels, I forgot that I harvested and thought that I got, somebody else said that
Oh.
today as well.
Yeah. You thought you got a tip?
I was
It
so
kept like
surprised that I got
mine
a
kept
tip.
showing. Mine kept showing like it was you're getting new kernels, and then it would be like that dark green, and then it would go away.
Yeah,
And
every
I
time
they
I
did that all
me.
day.
Oh, that's what it does when it loads, though. That's been doing that for a really long time. You guys just probably never noticed.
That's the
until
first
today.
I've had it
I
happen.
know.
that I
Yeah,
saw.
no, I noticed it before.
That's just a loading thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just loading stuff. So
But it was, you know, that excitement, like, ooh, it says new. Damn it, it's the
It's
stuff
just a
that
little
is
more
written.
evil.
Yeah.
but do you understand what I'm saying here about like, you know, if there are multiple places where you think that I have
Yes.
No,
put
it's
the,
1
that I put
a.m.
the
in New
clue.
York and then exhausted.
If there's multiple places where you think that I've put the clue, compare those things. Like, you know, that's what I would do if I was trying to find the clue. I would compare anywhere that you think the password might exist in its parts. I would compare those 2 things. And see
Mary,
if
what
I
was the
can't
name of
find
the
all
episode where Richard was in the hospital again? I want to check it, and I forgot the name.
I got it here.
That's the one. That's the one with in season 1. It's
Yeah.
um
Hang on, let me
episode
see.
8.
Forgiveness and
stuff.
stuff.
Yeah.
Does
It
anyone
feels
have any
like the
questions for
beginning.
John about any of the episodes? I mean, I understand the memento is up on high, but if there's any other question.
Yeah, John, who's your favorite character that is not a main character out of the town people after the first 3 seasons?
After the first 3 seasons, it would probably be a pretty close race between Babette and Kirk. I don't know if I don't know if I could say either one. Probably Kirk, but that's still pretty high up there for me.
Yeah, it's Suki and Kirk for me. Also, we didn't have to wait a year to find out after the end of a season. We had to wait 3 months, so it wasn't as bad as it sounds like it was.
Okay. So John, I was gonna ask you, I know who is your most like least favorite of all characters, but does Taylor still bother you? At one point you were saying that Taylor was starting to grate on your feelings with the way that he sometimes was really self-focused and didn't seem to, like, was always about his own like I can't, sorry, it's 1 a.m. I can't. My brain
Yeah.
is-
Yeah, I think for the most part, Taylor's a character that you really love to hate, but I can't really say that equates to I like the character. I like the actor and I like the acting performance, but I wouldn't say that I like that I enjoy the character. He annoys me.
Anyone else though? Any other characters like that?
Hmm. No, not really. I think that he's the only one. I mean, obviously, like I have fun with my most loathed character in all of narrative, like in all of storytelling since the beginning of time. But other than
That blows
other,
my mind.
other than
That you are you're really hating Mia for smiling and breathing.
Is there anybody that you hated at first and like now, or liked at first and hate now? I guess not hate, but dislike their character now.
Oh, like, are you saying like now at the end of season 3 or now like currently now?
Ew, I guess we're only going through season 3, huh?
I mean,
well, yeah.
Wait, I can do it currently now because you're basing on 1 to 3 based on where we are now.
Yeah.
But
So
it's
I could say now, right?
Anybody you
Yeah.
flip flopped on in either direction?
Yeah, Rory.
Yeah.
What
me
about
too.
Sherry?
Every
Oh,
time I
Sherry.
think
Yeah.
Sherry, I still keep on turning to say, what did I do now?
I would say Sherry is pretty she's pretty yeah, she's an interesting character that like definitely like I went from finding her utterly just annoying to I kind of like her. She seems all right. Like, even with like being in the hospital and Christopher not showing up and then Lorelai coming instead and all of that, to now being like, man, that character's awful.
I remember in the first season, me being really excited that you liked Christopher. Do you still like Christopher? Because
I do like Christopher, yes.
yay!
That is a character that I was prepared to dislike based on the sentiment that I should dislike him, but have not yet had any reason to.
Well, you know what, John? I agree with that as well. A sheep has very soft wool, and I like to pet.
I was gonna ask you, John, about the Dean character. How do you feel about Dean now? You
Yeah.
know, initially we meet him as this very sweet yet mysterious out of towner from Chicago, right? But as the series progresses, we kind of see that that image do a complete 180. So now that you've seen, I think most, if not all of the arc of the Dean character in the show, what do you think now of him? Looking back,
I mean, I feel sorry for the character more than anything. I can't fault him for his his personality. or for the things that he wants from life, right? Like his own, his own aspirations being kind of limited as compared to Rory's aspirations. But in general, I feel sorry for him in the narrative. I do think that he had like a pretty tragic story so far. But I definitely don't feel the same kind of like support of the character, like from like a team perspective, as I did at the very beginning. Like in the first season, I really thought the character was really cool. And then that turned from like, I thought he was really cool to like kind of defending how like he, he's sort of like the character was like kind of emotionally collapsing. And now I certainly don't see him as a suitable partner for Rory. But I still have affection for the character. I'll admit it, but I wouldn't consider myself to be Team Dean. But I wouldn't say I don't like the character anymore. There are things that I don't like that he did, but it's not that I would say that I don't like the character.
Do you have a favorite Emily moment? Or a least favorite Emily moment? Sometimes the least favorite stand out more.
Oh gosh, I might have to be reminded of some really bad ones, but the one that comes to mind as the nastiest that I've seen so far was it's not in any of the 3 seasons that we've seen, but the one where she goes to Christopher's apartment and basically tells him that he's like a weak man, but like he's got good genes, and like and that he needs her to like she needs him to like help her in this like plan to derail what's going on with Lorelai and Luke. It just struck me as the most like arch villain moment for that character in the entire series. Almost two-dimensionally so, to be honest. It felt really, really mustache twirly.
Like that.
It just felt very, very, very arch villain.
I feel that way about Richard when he goes behind Jason's back and goes to the father.
Oh,
that's
very, very arch villain. That's like classic mustache twirling. And even the way that the scene was presented was like so like clearly like evil.
We'll talk about that one more tomorrow, I guess, because that's when it starts to get exciting, I think.
Yeah. Season 4 is when I remember like being like, oh my goodness. I mean, it's got my favorite episode of the entire series in it.
Ooh, I can't wait to find out which one. Yay!
Shelly, did you want to ask something?
I was just going to ask the opposite of what Jessica asked. Is there any characters that were maybe not so favorable in the beginning that are now have really grown on you, and that you they're now beloved?
Lorelai, probably the main one. Why all? I mean,
you do realize you started the first season like recap being like, I didn't really like her. Oh yeah, she was so selfish. Oh, the narcissism. Oh, now it's like Lorelai's grown on you. Yeah.
Oh yeah, she's definitely the Gilmore that I'm most invested in right now. I mean, in the same way that I said I was like, it was so easy to put myself into Rory's shoes and see the story through Rory's eyes in those early seasons. I would say now it's the opposite. Like it's way harder for me to really like put myself into Rory's shoes and and to see through her eyes. She's now a character that I don't really that I don't really relate to that. But Lorelai, I mean, my goodness, every episode I'm so just right inside her, like right inside her. That sounded terrible. That was inside her. It sounded dirty. I'm right behind her eyes. Like I just feel like I'm seeing everything the way that she is, you know, and I just feel like I relate to all of that, all of that. We'll get to it tomorrow, but like there's a scene in this season that will probably be burned into my memory, like of this show for forever. That is a Lorelai moment.
Okay.
It's just like so clear to me why everyone loves Lorelai, and it's got to be from these seasons. It's got to be like.
But
starting
that's
in
a lot
season
of pressure on me to make sure that when I recap, I catch that scene.
I will remind you of that. I will remind you of that scene because I remember it. I remember the episode and I remember the scene. But like I said, it is like these seasons, season 5 and season 6, I just understand like now why the love like for Lorelai is so deep, and I feel like if I watched season 1 again with everything that I know about Lorelai now and how I feel about Lorelai now, it would almost definitely influence how I feel about Lorelai in season 1 through 3. Definitely.
Okay, so I think I can go ahead and say that either people are working on the memento.
Yeah,
or they
we're
have
all memento hunting.
That is hilarious. Like I was like, this
I'm
silence is
like
just
right
ridiculous.
now.
John,
Chinese
there
medicine.
has to be a time limit. Like there has to be
Yeah.
at some point where you're gonna have to say like give in, because I know people who stayed up all night last night and
Oh
they're
my
probably
goodness.
staying up
Okay.
this night
All right.
Oh my God.
So
for
so
mental health.
I did not do
probably the most extremely important one of those 10 is still in somebody's inbox, and I'm so surprised given who it is that they haven't checked.
Perhaps send it to someone else. Be like, this is the repeat of, so we know, and like send it to someone else, because like I'm saying, like you're gonna
I'll
have
say
mental
this.
health issues.
I'll
I'm
say
available.
this. How about this? I tried to spread those 10 clues out across our community geographically speaking. How about that?
Okay.
Maybe-
So
John, are
we
you
have
telling us that is
geography
Claudia?
We already knew that.
We
Claudia
already
got
knew
one.
that.
We had to do it.
Okay.
Yeah, we already figured that out a long time ago.
Oh yeah.
There's a
So-
group of a lot of us that have been going on this since yesterday morning, and
So you think-
it's
so you-
constant, and
so
none
do
of
you-
us can figure it out.
So do you think that you got all 10 of those?
No,
things?
we've only got 8.
No.
Okay.
No, but I'm saying, have you think that you figured out where all of the different ones, like geographically, are located?
We've been guessing people for the last 2 days, and a lot of them have been right, but
Are there any areas of the world that are missing? I guess is the best thing to ask you.
Yes, and I think we figured that part out too. If I go back about 40 pages in the chat, I'll figure that out too.
So the question is, are they in the room right now? And if so, just say
They are
yes.
not. They are not in the room right now.
Okay, they're not in the room. Perfect.
They're not in the room right
Because if
now.
anyone's in the room right now, go check your Marcus app. Alrighty, I'm gonna go ahead and say that this has been an amazing event. I'm really grateful for everyone for coming, and I'm really grateful for John for giving us this time. But I am gonna sign out now. I'll leave the room open and I'll put people as moderators. But thank you very much, everyone, and I welcome all feedback. If you have any suggestions, because we're doing this again tomorrow.
Mhm.
So if you have any suggestions, please share them with me.
Did you not receive any? Did you not receive any questions?
I
from
did,
your
and I
fire-
worked them in.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah. So
That's cool.
yeah.
That was smooth.